They'd literally just gone off stage and the lights had come back on and we was all trying to get out of the arena when it happened.
So what time was it? Just after 10:30, 10:40ish, is that right?
Yeah, about 10:30, 10:35ish.
And how did you get out? Which route did you take?
We had to just go up the stairs, but like everyone was like, about panicking and rushing, so we had to just kind of like hold on to each other and go up. And then when we got out, the security in the arena were just telling us just to follow like the exits and just go outside. But then when we got outside, we didn't realise anything was actually going on.
And as you, apologies, I don't know your name. What name? What name is it that you? What's your name anyway?
Ashlyn.
Ashlyn. Apologies, Ashlyn. And as you were all leaving, was there speculation amongst people about what had happened? Did you all immediately think this was some sort of terror incident?
A few people had said that they had heard that, like, they thought it was a bomb, but we thought that because she had a lot of balloons in her concert, so we thought it was just one of them, and people were being, like, just, like, assuming the worst. But then as we got outside, we realised that it was probably a bit more serious.
So at first you just thought it was some of these many pink balloons that were all over the concert area, yes?
Yeah, because it didn't, like, we couldn't see any smoke or anything, so we wasn't really too sure, but it was only when we got outside that we realised that it was more serious.
And when you got outside, the police were already there, is that right?
Yeah, there was only one police car at that moment, but, like, it literally took a couple of minutes and there was, like, loads of police turning up, and then they were telling everyone to move away from, like, the premises and to get away from the site and stuff.
And would you normally have gone home by train? Because obviously Victoria Station has been effectively closed,
they were telling everyone to move away from,
got
the tram into town, and that's how we were going to get away from the site. Obviously they've closed Victoria, so we can't get the tram home, and we're still waiting to get home now.
So how many people are there still trying to get home? Are there still lots of people around?
There's a few people around, and then there's I'm just with two of my sisters, and we're just waiting to get home, but we're kind of stuck.
And are the police ambulances, are the ambulances and police still on the scene?
Yeah, they've cordoned it all off, and there's like loads of police. I've not seen this many police in ages in my life, really.
And how have you felt through this? I mean, it must have been a terrifying process for all of you.
At first, we just, I don't know, like, felt a bit weird, but then as like it went on, like, it had scared us a bit, and we're like really concerned with what's happened.
Well, Ashlyn, I hope you get home safely. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you pass the phone back to our producer, Steph Oliver, I don't know if she's got other people there. Just a quick word that thank you very much indeed. Jeremy Corbyn has tweeted, "Terrible incident in Manchester. My thoughts are with all those affected and our brilliant emergency services." Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, is here with me, is on the line as well. Are you hearing any further from the police or any other security services, Mark, about what actually happened at Manchester Arena?
There is no official information coming out at all, Anna, from any of the usual sources that might point us in the direction of this being terror-related at this stage. Clearly, reports of an explosion are very worrying in the current climate. But even on that, it's worth just drilling down into the language used by Greater Manchester Police. They say they were responding to reports of an explosion. So they haven't actually, in that sense, confirmed themselves that it was an explosion. But again, you know, it is relatively early on in this incident. An hour and a half or so ago that this incident unfolded. So the first priority of the emergency services is to get a handle on the situation, try and reach those who have been injured in any incident, triage the most seriously injured. That they are doing. The fact that they've got a number of fatalities that they've confirmed tells you that there is a significant incident, and there may be quite a number of people who have been injured. So in these incidents, it can take quite a while, even for the police themselves, to determine what has happened. And even if it was an explosion, there are multiple reasons that an explosion can occur. It could be electrical, it could have been related to gas fittings. We just don't know at this stage. But what we can say for sure is that here in the UK, we are under a severe terror threat. It's second highest level at severe. We're told at this stage, or we're not being told, I should say, that it's going to rise to critical, the highest level, meaning that they would, the government, the authorities would fear that there were other terrorist attacks that were planned, and no confirmation at all that this is terror-related. But clearly there's a concern there. We know it was reports of an explosion that the police were responding to, and also in terms of the injured, they are being taken away. The images that we've got on screen of a fleet of ambulances arriving is no surprise. There is a well-rehearsed protocol in major centres of population around the UK to ensure that they get the resources to these major critical incidents very quickly. Now, British Transport Police have been tweeting, as well as Greater Manchester Police, saying that their officers remain at the scene of Manchester Arena, working alongside their colleagues from Greater Manchester Police, the North West Ambulance Service and Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. They are urging people to avoid the area. We know that rail services have been suspended as well, because this incident has happened very close to the main rail line there, which runs just by the arena itself. So people being asked to stay away from the area. Understandably, people are worried. We're told that Greater Manchester Police were putting out a casualty bureau number. I haven't seen that as yet. Maybe you have, Anna, but that will, of course, be of a great concern to many thousands of parents, potentially, because this is a big arena. It can house more than 20,000 people. That concert was well attended, we understand. So there could potentially be a lot of people pretty worried about what's happened to their loved ones. Hopefully they've all managed to gather themselves and call their family to let them know they're safe. But again, with these incidents, Anna, people that are a bit shocked maybe don't think of doing that in the first instance. That's why this casualty bureau should be up and running soon. But as I say, we await that number.
Yes, we certainly haven't seen it here. The Casualty Bureau number, as you say, will be released by Greater Manchester Police. And as you were mentioning there, Manchester Arena, the largest indoor arena in Europe, opened in 1995. It has a capacity for 21,000 people, according to its website, and it is a popular concert and sporting venue. A spokesman for Ariana Grande's record label said the singer was okay, but obviously a video posted on Twitter showed fans screaming and running out of the venue. Well, Emmerdale actress Isabelle Hodgins was at that concert at Manchester Arena. She joins us now live on the phone. Thank you for talking to us. What a difficult evening for everybody. Where were you and what did you hear?
Well, the concert had finished and we were all leaving, and then there was a big bang to our left, and then everybody just ran away from that immediate area. So we didn't know what had happened, but then nobody was really, people were screaming and running, but then it kind of died down. So we didn't know if a balloon had gone off, because balloons had been released in the concert, so we didn't know if it was that. And then everybody was panicking, they was pushing up the stairs, people were obviously running, climbing down and over the chairs. And then as we got out, just everybody was screaming and crying, and then the corridor was full, it smelled of burning, and there was quite a lot of smoke as we were leaving in the corridor, and an area had been blocked off so you couldn't go any further, but we managed to get out quite quickly, and then there was just lots of police and ambulances arriving as we were leaving.
So what part, you're the first person we've actually heard from who said that there was a smell of burning and smoke. Can you pin down where that was coming from? What part of the arena complex that might have been in?
We left on the side road, so it wasn't the main entrance. It was as you'd go out, and then there was the kind of the bridge underneath where you'd go in towards the ticket office. So we came out the steps that way on a side road. So to the right of the steps that come out near Victoria Station, it was around the corner from there.
And how do you feel now, hearing from the police that there are a number of confirmed fatalities and others injured? How do you feel about being there and witnessing this?
Yeah, it's just terrifying, and it's really shocking, and my heart goes out to anybody, you know, with anybody that's been hurt or anything like that. Obviously, it's just terrifying. We just needed to, we didn't know what was happening, so we just wanted to get out of Manchester and be safe. And then, obviously, as it's progressed and the story's developed, it's just shocking, and we just feel very shaken up, but lucky to have got away safely.
And in those early minutes of confusion where people were screaming and then they stopped screaming, was there any guidance as to what to do? Certainly, we spoke to one person who was some distance away from the marina, said that they heard an automated message telling people to evacuate. Did you hear that?
Yes, it was because when we were trying to leave, obviously the corridor was just full of people, and then as we were leaving, that was when the tannoy was going off saying that you needed to evacuate the area.
We might be losing your line, but just one final thought. How would you sum up how people were responding? Was there a sense of panic, or was it a fairly ordered evacuation?
No, it was, because it's such a big arena, it was just sheer panic, and nobody knew what had gone on, because people thought it was just a balloon, and obviously people just didn't know. So I think because nobody knew what, panic, wanting to leave and get away, get safe.
Yes, get away and get safe, certainly. We were beginning to lose what you said there, but Isabelle Hodgins, thank you very much indeed. Emmerdale actress who was at that Ariana concert this evening. Let's just get a little bit more detail, sorry about that, about this incident at Manchester Arena. Officers are at Manchester Arena following reports of an explosion within the foyer area. So this is the latest information we've got. An explosion within the foyer area of the stadium at 10:30 p.m. this evening. Emergency services are at the scene, and we are working to establish more information regarding the explosion, and we'll provide further updates as soon as possible. That is from British Transport Police. So they are using the word the explosion as if it was confirmed there, and saying that it happened within the foyer area of the stadium. And certainly we heard there from Isabelle Hodgins, didn't we, about the smell of burning and the smoke. One other piece of news to bring you from the Associated Press news agency. They say that several people have died following reports of an explosion tonight at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. A representative said the singer was not injured. Clearly, the word we've had from Greater Manchester Police is that there have been a number of fatalities after reports of an explosion. And I'll go back to that British Transport Police statement saying reports of an explosion within the foyer area at 10:30 p.m. this evening. Ashish Joshi is here with me, looking through other witness statements, and certainly a degree of panic and confusion, because if we look at the picture to the left hand of your screen there, all of these pink balloons had been released, hadn't they, from inside the concert. So many people in there, first of all, thought it was the balloons bursting.
We've heard reports tonight. Initially, I have to say, at about 10:30, people thought it might have been a bang or an explosion caused by some sort of electrical failure. Some people have said they thought it was balloons going off. But also, to balance that, witnesses a long way away from the Manchester Arena saying that they could feel and heard what they think is an explosion. Now, that was very quickly corroborated by Greater Manchester Police, who rushed to the scene, lots of officers turning up with emergency services while they still thought it was just a report of an incident. They quickly followed that up with, this is a serious incident and we are dealing with casualties. I have to warn you that there are lots of reports on Twitter about the numbers involved, but certainly nothing official as to how many people might have died. We're still waiting for Greater Manchester Police to update us on that. They're working together with the Transport Police because there is a transport gridlock for thousands of people trying to leave the arena. It was sold out, this concert, so it would have been absolutely packed inside. And certainly the first people who heard the explosions, you can see the pictures on your screen, that's what caused so much confusion and panic. And certainly the witnesses, Anna, you've been talking to tonight, speak of the same mass confusion, hysteria almost, but certainly people being evacuated from the Manchester Arena. And this evening, the first confirmation you've had of smoke inside the building, and that's from an eyewitness.
We are, of course, in an election campaign. There's been reaction from political leaders. Jeremy Corbyn, in a tweet, said, "Terrible incident in Manchester. My thoughts are with all those affected and our brilliant emergency services." And the Liberal Democrat leader, Tim Farron, "This is a shocking and horrific attack targeting children and young people who were simply enjoying a concert. My deepest sympathies are with the victims and with families who have lost loved ones, as well as those desperately waiting for news. I would like to pay tribute," Mr. Farron goes on to say, "to the bravery and dedication of the emergency services. This is an attack on innocent people, and the nation is united both in its grief and its determination to stand up to this deplorable attack." He is using the word attack. We have not had official confirmation that this is an attack. Liverpool's Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, whose daughters were at the Manchester Arena concert, said, "Feels sick to think that people have lost their lives at a gig attended by so many young people. All my thoughts go out to those parents waiting to hear of the safety of their children. It's a parent's worst nightmare, so sad." And he then thanked the taxi driver who picked up his two girls from the venue. So not surprising, Ashish, given the current climate, that we are getting quick responses from political leaders.
Yes, because now I think it's safe to say there was a major incident. There are casualties, there are fatalities, and people are being able to follow this on their TV screens, on Sky, and of course on the social platforms from people who are there. And I think really what is worrying a lot of people is Ariana Grande is a superstar with a very young following. And there would have been so many young people there without parents, and that's particularly worrying, not just for the children, but for the parents at home who are watching this unfold. And that's why I think Greater Manchester Police are very keen to keep us updated while still dealing with what is a major incident there. But certainly for parents, it's a very difficult time. You were talking about the taxi driver who picked up those two girls. Already lots of reports about people rushing to the area to try and help, taxi drivers offering free rides, hotels where these children who have been separated from their parents can be collected, where they're being kept safe. But certainly it looks like it's a major incident, and this is going to be a difficult one for the Greater Manchester Police, because whilst they have to keep us updated throughout the evening, they still have to be very careful not to unduly panic people who are watching these utterly shocking scenes at home now.
And Tim Farron, they're talking about an attack. Certainly we've not had official confirmation, have we, from either the British Transport Police, who are involved because of Victoria train station right on Manchester Arena, and nor from Greater Manchester Police as well. So we await more information on that. Yeah,
certainly the police are very careful in the sort of language they're using this evening, incident, explosion, but certainly nothing to suggest or officially that this was a terrorist attack. When they confirm that, they will let us know. But certainly at the moment, they are very careful in the language that they are using. But it's a difficult situation because transport, we saw those pictures early on, thousands of people fleeing from the arena on the roads in their cars, traffic jams, helicopters overhead, ambulances, sirens. So it must be a desperately frightening time for the people who are there. And certainly I've seen pictures this evening which look to be official of many injured people being treated by paramedics at the scene, and even some other pictures of armed police attending the scene. So remember, not so long ago, Greater Manchester Police were carrying out anti-terror drills, and they were making the public very aware of what they were doing, because as obviously one of the biggest cities in the country, they, like the Met Police, like all the other police forces, have a coordinated response. They know exactly what is going to happen, who's going to do what. So this is the drill which has today become a reality. But certainly they look like they are coping with the situation as best they can, and really trying to get a handle on the situation. Before they want to even find out what caused it, they'll be treating people to triage and making sure that anyone who needs treatment will get that treatment.
There are reports that taxi drivers have been offering free rides to families who escaped. Another is appealing for people to get in touch because they've got a number of children at a local hotel. The difficulty, I suppose, Ashish, is that with the train line closed, all of these people, thousands of them, have got to get home, haven't they? Yeah,
just to add to what you've just said, there are lots of people, and these are pretty authentic tweets on social media. There are people offering accommodation to anyone who's stuck there. I mean, this is really where the city will be tested to its limits. I mean, we don't know the scale of exactly how damaging these explosions were, but we know there are casualties. We don't know how many, but certainly the medical services are there. They're attending the scene, but they are being supported by ordinary citizens who are throwing open their doors tonight, taxi drivers offering lifts, hotels where these children who have been separated from their parents are being kept safe until they can be collected. But it's a difficult situation because if the transport networks are down and the police want to evacuate the area, how are they going to do that? It's going to be a very difficult situation for the police to try and get people away from there because there are no trains running. But one of the witnesses you spoke to earlier on said he'd managed to, or she'd managed to get a tram away from there. So some trams and buses obviously still running, but the major train networks are still suspended.
Ashish, for the moment, thank you. Let's bring in our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, and just a little bit more detail that bomb disposal units, Mark, I understand you've learned, have arrived at Manchester Arena and local hospitals are on alert. Can you bring us up to date with what you're hearing then?
Yeah, just within the last 5 minutes or so, bomb disposal teams have arrived on scene to begin an examination of the scene itself. And as you said there, Anna, a local hospital is now put on alert to receive a number of injured. We've clearly seen a lot of ambulances arriving at the scene. The video that we've got in the early stages is not showing too many ambulances that have left the scene. But there are reports from eyewitnesses of many injured within this area. One eyewitness has reported on another outlet that they were in the ticket hall area of Manchester Arena when there was a huge explosion that shot them up into the air a number of feet. Now, that person said that they then saw many injured within this ticket hall area. That would, to an extent, appear to concur with reports that are coming out from British Transport Police, who say that they were responding to reports of an explosion within the main foyer. So I guess we're talking the sort of ticket hall main foyer area. With regard to that, it may be one and the same. But bomb disposal teams now on scene and those hospitals put on alert to expect a number of injured. In the meantime, police are continuing to secure the area. The cordon that is around this very large venue is being extended further out. We see that again quite regularly when the emergency services, the police, get enough police officers there in significant numbers, then they can start pushing that cordon back, and they do that out of an abundance of caution. We've just had, it seems, at least one explosion. There's always concern about the possibility of other explosions as well, and that's why you are seeing what is an active crime scene at the moment being extended out as they get people away from the scene. We can see there's other images now of police support turning up at this arena. Included in that support are armed officers. They've been conducting a search, pushing people out of the area itself and calling out for walking wounded to identify themselves and come forward. I should just say, Anna, in terms of official confirmation, we have not received any information that there's any confirmation that this explosion may have been terrorist related. But the protocols that they have now enacted here are the protocols for a terrorist incident. You have armed support, as you can see there in the background, these officers in ballistic armour alongside the other officers who are manning just the ticker tape there as they push people further out from the main scene at the arena. But the protocol they've enacted is a counter-terrorism response protocol that allows them to bring in significant resources into that area and to secure that in accordance with their training. There was one contact of mine was telling me a short time ago a big exercise that took place in Manchester just back in December, training for a counter-terrorism scenario. All of the emergency services and first responders were involved in that. They are well rehearsed in dealing with these kinds of incidents. And as you can see from there, it's a fairly calm scene from the live shot that we're offering you there. But it is a cordon that has been pushed quite a way back from the main seat of what happened at about 10:30 on Monday evening.
Mark, stay there. Let's just bring in one person we spoke to a little earlier. A few moments ago, the actress Isabelle Hodgins, who was inside the venue at the time of the explosion, told us that she'd heard an explosion and could smell smoke inside the arena. Let's listen again.
Well, the concert had finished and we were all leaving, and then there was a big bang to our left, and then everybody just ran away from that immediate area. So we didn't know what had happened. But then nobody was really, people were screaming and running, but then it kind of died down. So we didn't know if a balloon had gone off, because balloons had been released in the concert, so we didn't know if it was that. And then everybody was panicking, they was pushing up the stairs, people were obviously running, climbing down and over the chairs. And then as we got out, just everybody was screaming and crying, and then the corridor was full, it smelled of burning. And there was quite a lot of smoke as we were leaving in the corridor, and an area had been blocked off so you couldn't go any further, but we managed to get out quite quickly, and then there was just lots of police and ambulances arriving as we were leaving.
So what part, you're the first person we've actually heard from who said that there was a smell of burning and smoke. Can you pin down where that was coming from, what part of the arena complex that might have been in?
We left on the side road, so it wasn't the main entrance. It was as you'd go out, and then there was the kind of the bridge underneath where you'd go in towards the ticket office. So we came out the steps that way on a side road. So to the right of the steps that come out near Victoria Station, it was around the corner from there.
And how do you feel now, hearing from the police that there are a number of confirmed fatalities and others injured? How do you feel about being there and witnessing this?
Yeah, it's just terrifying, and it's really shocking, and my heart goes out to anybody, with anybody that's been hurt or anything like that. Obviously, it's just terrifying. We didn't know what was happening, so we just wanted to get out of Manchester and be safe. And then, obviously, as it's progressed and the story's developed, it's just shocking, and we just feel very shaken up, but lucky to have got away safely.
Isabelle Hodgins there. We've just had some new video in via social media. Let's listen to this.
No!
Ashish Joshi is here listening to us. What's your reading of that piece of video, Ashish?
That was a dashboard camera which was about a quarter of a mile away from the Manchester arena, where if you look at the video again, you will see a small spark, or what looks like a small flash in the left-hand side of the screen just before that sound, which sounds like an explosion. Just to tell you, the Northwest Ambulance Service, the NHS Trust, NWAS NHS Trust, has just tweeted, "If you require our assistance over the next few hours, please bear with us. We have a large number of resources at the incident in Manchester." So clearly, the emergency services, the ambulance services are pretty stretched. They are diverting as many of their ambulances and resources and paramedics as they can to what they're describing as the incident in Manchester, and they're asking people in Manchester who might need assistance away from the arena just to bear with them. So clearly, this is a testing time for all of the emergency services who are there.
Let's just re-listen, if we can, to that latest piece of video we've had in.
No.
So our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, also no doubt watching and listening. Mark, what's your reading?
Well, I mean, you can quite clearly hear, even though the man inside that vehicle had his car radio on, you could still hear what appeared to be a pretty loud explosion in the distance. There are no visible signs of the explosion, but certainly you could hear it quite clearly, even though his radio was on. And that is very consistent with the reports that we've been getting through. And it's probably worth just taking a step back and highlighting what we had initially thought with reports of 2 explosions that came through to us shortly after 10:30 in the evening, with people reporting explosions inside the arena itself, and no real confirmation from the police for quite some significant time. But then there was that word that they put out on their Twitter feed saying that they were attending a serious incident after reports of an explosion, and then confirming a number of fatalities. Now, despite the early reports, Sana, of there being 2 explosions, we've really only been able to get sort of firm confirmation, if you like, of 1 reported explosive incident, but that's not unusual in these incidents in the very early stages, when people understandably are panicked and they may mistake other noises for secondary explosions. But at least 1 explosion at the moment, and the very latest, really within the last 10 minutes or so, is that bomb disposal units have arrived at the scene. Now, there are eyewitnesses reports, of course, other journalists, news outlets, speaking to people who were inside the arena at the time, and people have spoken about this explosion being centred in an area around the foyer, around the sort of main ticket hall within the arena itself. Some people, 1 person reported being lifted up into the air a number of feet. Someone else reporting that they saw smoke and they saw clothes everywhere and a number of injured lying about that main ticket hall. So clearly very worrying reports that are coming out at the moment. Very little officially, but that's understandable when you're dealing with a major incident like this, and the emergency services are focused on getting to the injured, trying to help those most seriously hurt, triaging them and getting them off to hospital. And we've also been told that a number of area hospitals have been put on alert to receive injured people from this incident within the coming hours.
And already appeals for people to reconnect with those who are at the concert, who they haven't heard from. A number of children, we understand, being held at a local hotel. The difficulty is when you have people fleeing in some sense of panic, it's reconnecting people, families get separated, and not everyone can get in touch with home.
Yeah, and that's why Greater Manchester Police know absolutely there is an urgency to try to get this casualty bureau up and running so that they can take calls, take names and check them out. The difficulty is, especially late at night, on a weekday evening, you have to get everybody that can man these bureaus back in to a central control room to be able to man the phones, and that takes some time. So the police, despite some criticism that this casualty bureau isn't up and running yet, and there is no number for people to call, they are working on it, and they're working on it as a matter of urgency. It's just trying to get the people in place so they can get it up and running as soon as possible. There is no point in opening a casualty bureau if you've just got a couple of people manning the phones, and then people are just on the end of a phone trying to get information for long periods of time. It's just going to frustrate them even more. So I would imagine fairly soon now, they will be able to get that number out to us, and we'll be able to get that to members of the public. And there will be many, understandably, worried members of the public, Anna, because this was a venue that was well attended. We know that it's a venue that can house more than 20,000 people. You know, the concert had just ended, so many people were filtering through that ticket hall, heading off to catch their train or the bus or their taxi at the end of the concert. So it would have been crowded at the time, which would be another indicator of the reports that we're seeing of significant numbers of people who have been killed and injured in this incident.
And yes, there are speculation now about the numbers who may have died, but we just reiterate what Greater Manchester Police have said, that there are a number of confirmed fatalities and others injured. And again, asking people to avoid the area as first responders work tirelessly at the scene. And of course, we heard from Mark quite a little earlier that a number of local hospitals are on standby. Let's bring in Jenny now. Jenny Brewster joins us on the line. She was there at the concert with her daughter Evie. What a very difficult evening for all of you, Jenny. You have our sympathies, obviously, but tell us what happened to you, what you experienced.
It was distressing. I took my daughter of 11. This was her first concert. We went, we had a great night, and as Ariana Grande was singing her last song, which was Dangerous Woman, my daughter was tired and she needed the bathroom, and she said, "Can we just go outside now?" And so we did. We went to the bathroom, and then we said, "Let's go now before the rush." So we walked towards where the MEN car park is, where we were parked, and there was a row of stewards stood in a line, stopping us getting through. But they were very friendly, and they said, "This isn't your best way, girls. You're best turning round, and you can get to your car park that way." As I turned round, boom, one loud noise. And then for the first 10 seconds, we thought about it, and we just walked with haste. And then a gentleman said, "Run!" So we ran, and we walked down we walked quickly down the stairs. That's when people were flooding through the concert doors, and the sound was definitely coming from the main foyer. Where the guests normally enter through and present their tickets. On exiting the building, we then saw crowds of people and children devastated. We went to the car, which was 10 seconds away. As soon as we got to the car, you could smell the burning. Coming out then was quite a fluid operation. There were people around us. The children were devastated. We could see police running in front of our car, people, emergency services with huge red backpacks on them running into the building. But we did manage to get away, all within about 3 or 4 minutes. But it was devastating.
Did you see anybody yourself who'd been injured, or were you too far away from that foyer area that you were describing?
Didn't see anybody, just traumatised people. But you could smell it. And to confirm, we only heard one explosion.
Did you have to walk through the foyer as you made your way to the car? In other words, did you just miss it?
We did. That line of stewards that blocked us and turned us around made a huge difference to our evening tonight.
So tell me what the difference would have been then if they hadn't been there blocking your way.
I think, thank God and thank them, because we were heading exactly to where I think it was.
Right, so they just held you up enough that you just missed it?
Oh yeah, it was a line. You couldn't reach it. They simply said, "No, this isn't the right way for you now, girls." They were directing us out to it, and they definitely saved our lives tonight.
And how do you feel, having taken your daughter to her first concert, that something like this happened there?
It's just so sad, so sad, so sad.
Were there many children there?
Those poor people. It was full of beautiful young girls and boys and families, and it's just tragic to think that such a great family evening has now ended in such horror.
We obviously don't know what caused this single loud bang that you talked about, but is it your sense that it was an explosion, given that you could smell the burning?
When I first heard it, because it sounded like it was behind closed doors, it was quite muffled, but very loud, but we knew it wasn't in our bit. So we just kind of walked away and looked at each other as if to think, that was strange. Then when the man shouted, "Run," with real panic, we did. We came out, smelt it, and then then it sunk into me what this was.
We really appreciate you talking this there, Jenny, who was with her daughter Evie. Let's bring in again Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent. What have you heard, Mark?
I can confirm to you now that the Northwest Counter-Terror Command, there are regional counter-terrorism units across the country. This is the counter-terrorism unit that covers that area around Greater Manchester. They are confirming that they are treating this as a possible terrorist incident. So not confirmed, but then you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be confirmed so soon after. But they are now treating this as a possible terrorist incident. And of course, that is the worst possible news. We were certainly aware of the potential for this to be terrorist-related, and a great deal of concern, but we were trying to be a bit circumspect at the time. But now police confirming to us in the form of the Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit that at this stage they are treating it as a possible terrorist incident. Now, as more information comes through to them, I would expect that in the coming hours, possibly even overnight, but certainly first thing in the morning, we will have a meeting of the British government's crisis emergency cabinet, COBRA, at Downing Street or within the cabinet offices around there. It is now clearly a very serious incident. It was a significant incident before anyway, with reports of fatalities. But now, if the information that we're getting from the Northwest Counter-Terrorist Unit turns out to be the actual case, that it was indeed a terrorist attack, then there are all kinds of ramifications. We are, as you know, in the middle of an election period. We had that attack in Westminster just recently, but before the general election was called, there has been a great deal of concern about the potential for terrorist-related incidents during this election period, and not necessarily targeting political events as such, but any crowded place, any public gathering during this period. And clearly, if it turns out that this was terror-related, it will have all kinds of ramifications and repercussions for the political campaigning going forward, and for the way in which the security services and the police deal with that continued campaigning, because, of course, people gather in public places at public events over the next couple of weeks before the election itself. So very worrying news coming through now from the Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit, confirmed to us at Sky News that they are treating this explosion at the Manchester Arena as a potential terrorist incident. It is the early stages. We know that the bomb disposal team are now on scene. They will be confirming that there are no other potential devices about, and also making sure that there is no threat from whatever detonated within, we believe, the ticket hall, the main ticket hall at Manchester Arena.
We saw pictures there, didn't we, of a sniffer dog going towards a silver car with its hazards flashing, it would appear. Obviously, all vehicles like this would be treated with great caution. We heard earlier from Mark that bomb disposal unit was at the scene as well. They need to verify vehicles like this, given, as we heard from Mark White there, that Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit now confirming they are treating this as a possible terrorist incident. Ashish Joshi is here with me, and we heard, didn't we, from Jenny Brewster. She was there with her 11-year-old daughter, Evie, her first concert. She believes that a line of stewards saved her life from walking across that foyer, but also pointing out that this was full of beautiful young girls, because Ariana Grande has a young following, doesn't it?
Yeah, she's a superstar, and she would have had very young people at the concert. It was sold out within days after it was announced. And just looking at some of the pictures that you can see, you can make out that it's a very young audience who have gone to this concert tonight, not suspecting anything like this to have happened. Many of them have been separated from their guardians, their parents, their families. So the fear, the shock, the terror, the panic isn't confined to the Manchester arena. There are desperate parents who are sitting at home waiting to find out if their children are safe, if their loved ones are safe. Lots of acts of the city coming together tonight. Taxi drivers offering free rides as well.
Ashish, thank you. So confirmation, this is being treated as a terrorist incident. More in a moment.
Assumption is
right.
that something like this happened. And that's part of the reason people would have reacted the way they did. You know, someone who was on the show earlier who was there said, well, when I first heard it, there's a lot of big bangs at something like this. I may not have thought something of it.
Just look
but
at the
then
coverage
I did because of what has happened.
Just look at the coverage last week in New York City when the driver drove into Times Square. And immediately, where does everybody go to? Terrorist attack. Because actually, in several parts of the world, including in Israel, this is a common terror tactic now.
Right.
Driving into a crowd of people.
We've seen that across Europe as just an example. Yeah.
So you don't need a sophisticated bomb-making capability anymore. It could be something quite simple as driving into Times Square. Who knows if this is actually a terror attack? What sparked this? But I just think this is where we in sort of the West go immediately whenever there's an incident like this. And it's, you know, these are extremely turbulent times.
And you know, one of the mantras of Homeland Security in the United States, and I think around the world, is you hope for the best, you prepare for the worst. And I think that applies to tonight as well.
And General Marks, how quickly do you think we're going to know what happened here? Obviously, we're now in just about not even 1 hour since we first heard of this, just about 1 hour. It doesn't matter what time it is in the UK. They're working every second that they can. How quickly do you think we will know what this was, whether it was terror or just some horrible accident that caused stampedes?
Within 6 hours, I think we'll know more. The priorities of work right now will be to care for the wounded, keep those alive, isolate the dead. Let's be objective about this. Isolate the area so you can begin to build the forensics, make this thing as antiseptic as you can, and you start diving into it. So you'll have multiple teams that have rehearsed this over multiple times, unfortunately, that will be doing their tasks to ensure that within a short order of time, you at least have a sense of where you need to go to figure out how this thing occurred.
Dan.
And if it was a terror attack, they also have to keep an eye on what other public venues are potential targets and are vulnerable.
All of the above.
If there's, I mean, God forbid, if there's a sophisticated coordinated attack where you can hit multiple locations, they'll immediately keeping an eye on public transportation, any areas, venues that are highly concentrated with people. Whenever these attacks occur, if it is an attack, that's where law enforcement, Homeland Security, or the Home Office, in the case of the UK, goes.
Yeah, and I think, John, it's worth remembering, because I remember that afternoon, I think so many do, when the Paris attacks happened. Obviously, it was evening there, it was afternoon here. It did take a little while, probably just about the time we've had now, maybe a little bit less if I recall, but it was very quickly that they knew that something horrible had happened. Obviously, the details, you know, took quite some time over the next few days to come out, but they knew it was terror.
Of course, and in that case, we had interconnected incidents, as Dan is expressing. You know, one of the telltale signs is if there are detonations at different exits, for example, or multiple incidents across the city. There does not seem
Video from inside the venue showed hundreds of fans fleeing after a huge bang. Several people have also been injured. People are being urged by police to stay away from the area. And Manchester Victoria Station has also been closed and all trains cancelled. Well, welcome to Sky News. You join us with breaking news this evening. Greater Manchester Police say there have been a number of confirmed fatalities and others injured after responding to a serious incident at Manchester Arena. Video from the venue shows hundreds of fans fleeing the arena after a reported explosion during a concert by the pop singer Ariana Grande. Well, joining me is our correspondent Ashish Joshi, who is monitoring this incident. And we've just had confirmation, Ashish, from Northwest Counter-Terror Command that they are treating this as a possible terrorist incident.
Yeah, they've been very careful in the use of language. The Greater Manchester Police and all the police forces who are dealing with this incident, careful in the way they're describing it, but certainly the confirmation through to us in the last couple of minutes from Mark White that the Terrorism Command in that area are treating this as a suspected terrorist incident. I mean, that's the first time they've used that word about terrorism, but certainly they have said there are casualties. They are setting up a casualty bureau. We don't know the numbers involved at the moment. Lots of speculation on social media, but certainly as far as the ambulance services are concerned, they're sending or diverting most of their, if not all their resources to the arena. So that will give you an indication of just how big an incident this is. Large parts of the area have been cordoned off. Bomb disposal units are in place. There are sniffer dogs. They're seeking out suspected packages, and certainly police trying to get as many people away from the area. And I think that was the problem at the beginning. This happened at about 10:30, just as concertgoers were leaving. Reports of a large bang and explosion. We've seen a video where that bang can be heard quite clearly. And certainly you would have had a funneling effect as thousands of people, many of them young, separated from their parents, who've gone to this concert tonight. You can hear the screams, the confusion. Witnesses telling you this evening that it was chaos inside, but certainly stewards managing to get a pretty good grip on the situation, getting people outside of the arena and away to safety. And that's where you have these videos of cars just piling onto the roads and certainly jams around the area. The other complication there is that the transport network has been badly affected. Trains, and I understand trams too. We've certainly seen some photographs tonight, trams running not in service. So people stuck around the arena with nowhere to go, and that's a concern for the police.
Let's bring in our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White. And certainly after this news from the Northwest Counter-Terror Command, we are anticipating that senior national counter-terrorism officers would be assembling in London. The government may well call the Cobra Emergency Committee, Mark. But tell us what you've been hearing. And we've still had no official confirmation of the numbers who may have died in this incident.
No, but we are hearing, worryingly, some reports of significant casualties, perhaps running into double figures, certainly significant numbers of people injured. And information is coming out from local hospitals in the Manchester area says that they are treating a number of people with what are believed to be shrapnel-type injuries. So it would be consistent, certainly, with blast-type injuries that they are treating at the moment at hospitals in the Greater Manchester area. As far as the official word from the authorities is concerned, well, certainly Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit, which is one of the regional units. There are a number around the UK that have responsibility for counter-terrorist policing in that area. They are confirming to us that they are treating this as a possible terrorist incident. And as you mentioned there in your introduction, Anna, given that is the case, of course, the headquarters of Counter-Terror Command is at Scotland Yard in London, and the most senior counter-terrorism officers, the investigating teams there, will be meeting now as a matter of urgency to gather information on what's happened. They will be travelling up to Manchester at some point as well to get a handle on this investigation. And if it turns out, as they fear, that it was a terrorist-related incident, then clearly there are significant ramifications. Here in the UK, we are in an election period. I was talking to security officials just recently about their concerns about the possibility of terrorist attacks over the election period. We had that deadly attack, of course, on Westminster Bridge and at the Palace of Westminster before the election period started. But we've had a couple of incidents since then. One of a young man stopped with a rucksack full of knives just on Whitehall, not far from the Palace of Westminster, and another incident where a woman has been charged in relation to a planned attack, we're told, allegedly from the Crown Prosecution Service in central London around the Westminster area as well. So there has been mounting concern about the potential for terrorist attacks. We are in a period where the threat level is at its second highest point. At severe, meaning an attack is highly likely. And if this is confirmed now to be what the police fear, a terrorist-related attack, then, as I say, there will be significant ramifications for the election itself. We may even see campaigning suspended for a day or so. There will be a review of security because, of course, you've got the Prime Minister and other senior politicians and even just ordinary members of the public gathering at these political events and crowded events like this one in Manchester this evening. Doesn't have to be a politically aligned event. It can be any crowded event, is, as we've seen so often around the world, a potential target for terrorists. But that, this hour, is the theory that police are working on up in Manchester and now down here in London with senior Scotland Yard officers coming in to meet and work out what has happened up at the Manchester arena. But the prime theory they're working on is that this was a terrorist-related incident.
Let's bring in Nick Martin, our correspondent. As we heard there from Mark White, Nick, this will have ramifications for the election campaign. It may well be that it draws senior politicians to London for some sort of Cobra meeting. But right now, this was not about politics. This was about young children, young girls attending a concert of a much-loved pop star.
That's right, and where I am at the moment is one of a number of police cordons which have been put up around the arena, which is, as we've been hearing for the last few hours, very central in Manchester. And the reason why there seems to be a lot of tension here is, and I'm going to spin the camera around, is because in the last half an hour the police have been very interested in a silver car which appears to have been abandoned on the crosshatches of this crossroads just on the outskirts of where the arena is. And in the last few minutes, about 5-10 minutes ago, a police sniffer dog was called in. We were all told to get back. The dog went round the car and inside the car and is actually just in the last few minutes left. And the atmosphere seems to have calmed down a bit. Now, these police cordons are everywhere around the arena, as you'd expect, and every now and again we're seeing people coming through the police cordon who were at this concert, and we've been speaking to a few of them on Sky News this evening. What seems to have happened, from what we can gather from the various people we've spoken to, are that just as people were starting to leave the concert, so the lights had gone up, people were making their way out of the seats, There was a bang. Some people have described it as an explosion. Some witnesses have said they saw a white flash, they saw some smoke. Others said they didn't, they just heard the bang. Some people said that they dropped to the floor, and others said that they immediately ran out. And at the time, it wasn't clear what caused that explosion. It's still not clear, although Mark White's just explaining there that it is starting to move towards looking like some kind of terrorist incident, although the language being used by the police is very cautious. We've only had a very minimal amount of detail from Greater Manchester Police, who has said that they are investigating reports of an explosion. And unfortunately, within that explosion, there have been some fatalities and some injuries. And we're hearing from our sources, from Mark White, that Northwest Counter-Terrorist Agency believe that they could be looking at a terrorist incident. So you have to read between the lines. The language is still very cautious, but it looks to be moving in that direction. And in the skies, there aren't just police helicopters, but there looks to be what looks like a possible military helicopter in the sky. There's certainly a lot of air traffic, and cordons like this, as I tried to drive in.
Nick Martin, apologies, I'm just going to butt in there. Let's just bring you the very latest we're getting. The Greater Manchester Police are saying now that they believe 19 people have died. So 19 people, it seems, have died. This is from Greater Manchester Police. I interrupted Nick Martin there. So the very latest we've had is that the Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit are treating this as a possible terrorist incident. We know that bomb disposal units have arrived at Manchester Arena. Local hospitals are on alert. Some reporting that they are treating injuries consistent with shrapnel wounds. One report, unconfirmed, I saw, say consistent with some sort of nail bomb. So let's just get the very latest information. We can confirm there was an incident as people were leaving the Ariana Grande show. The incident took place outside the venue in a public space. So the breaking news coming through to us from the police that this is being treated as a terrorist incident. British police say around 50 people were injured in that incident in Manchester, and British police also say that 19 people, that's 19 people have died in the incident at Manchester Arena. So let me reiterate those news lines then. This is from British police. 19 people have died in the incident at Manchester Arena. They say around 50 people have been injured, and they go on to say that this is being treated as a terrorist incident. Well, Nick Martin is outside the scene. So clearly a devastating attack, it would appear, Nick, from the news this evening.
I mean, in the early stages of this, there was a lot of talk about, was it an explosion? Was it an electrical fault? Was it a bomb? It is now apparent that this is a significant and serious incident which has occurred in Manchester tonight. 19 fatalities is a huge number, and it's no wonder that in the last 10-15 minutes we're seeing a huge amount of police activity on the roads around Manchester, and almost intermittently we're seeing ambulances coming up the road heading to some of the major hospitals. At 19 fatalities, and one would imagine a significant amount of injured, this is clearly now a very significant incident, and terrorism will be the top of the list of suspected motives. A lot of work will be now going on around the scene, and this has to be seen within, of course, the context of what is going on in Britain at the moment, an extremely high level of anxiety about terrorism, and police forces across Britain have been training for incidents such as this, incidents where something happens in a large gathering of people which leads to a large amount of fatalities, walking wounded and injuries, which demands a huge response from first responders, paramedics, police officers. And so police forces have been rehearsing for instances like this, but now they are embroiled in it for real here in Manchester tonight. The helicopter is in the sky, police cordons all around, and a huge amount of forensic interest will be now focused on the arena and trying to crucially build up a chronology of what happened, starting at the beginning of the concert. Who was searched? Was the searching sufficient? Was anybody in the arena with a device that they shouldn't have been in with? All these questions will now be traced back to try and establish what happened here in Manchester tonight. But the news that 19 people have died in that arena will be devastating for their family and friends, but also a huge wake-up call for the police forces here and around Britain. And police forces across Britain now will be on a heightened state of alert. Of course, Britain's terror threat level is already high. It's severe, which means an attack is extremely likely. There's perhaps talk of that heightening. Mark White was talking about that earlier, our Home Affairs correspondent. But around the cordons where I am, and I can only speak for what I see here, there's a lot of activity, a lot of police officers stopping people, some people coming back through the cordons who were at the concerts, although those numbers have diminished in the last half an hour, and it's almost impossible to get within, I would say, half a mile of the Manchester Arena now, which is a very city centre location. Its capacity is around 21,000. It's the biggest arena of its kind in Europe. It has high-profile concerts pretty much every week here in Manchester. It attracts young, old, families. They would all have been in there tonight. Greater Manchester Police tell us that they are going to set up a victims bureau. That will be a number which families who haven't heard from their loved ones yet can call to establish whether they're safe or whether tragically they have been caught up in this. Just seeing around the corner now, typical more police activity. This is ambulances going back into the scene. I've just seen about 2 or 3 leave. That's one that's going back in towards the arena, which is just down that road. This police cordon preventing us from going any further. Just see up here, police officers talking probably to residents or people who are trying to get in there. They are being told not a chance. It's now being fully sealed off. We did hear earlier from eyewitnesses who varying degree of eyewitnesses who all heard a bang as people were starting to leave that arena when the lights had gone up. Some people thought it might have been an electrical fault. Some people described it as a speaker or an amplifier exploding. But clearly the level of fatalities, 19 as of a few minutes ago, would suggest something bigger, something perhaps more sinister. And the police here would have set up a Gold Command at headquarters in Manchester. There'll be senior police officers organising this investigation now, monitoring it as a major incident, and terrorism will be high up that list of suspicions now, given the scale of fatalities and one would imagine the scale of the injured.
And just a bit more detail as we piece together what will now be a terrorist investigation, the chronology and geography. The statement from Manchester Arena, the concert venue itself, saying we can confirm there was an incident as people were leaving the Ariana Grande show. That much we knew. They go on to say, though, that the incident took place outside the venue in a public space. We had believed that the incident happened in the foyer area. So their statement says the incident took place outside the venue in a public space. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims. And as you can see, the latest statement on the incident at the Manchester Arena we've had from the police. Further details then, they say, have now been released. Just before 10:35 p.m. on Monday the 22nd, police were called to reports of an explosion. So far, 19 people have been confirmed dead, with around 50 others injured. This is currently being treated as a terrorist incident until police know otherwise. And certainly, Nick Martin, one begins to wonder about how this will suck a number of cabinet ministers to London to hold a COBRA meeting. What will happen in terms of the election campaign? We've already heard from a number of leaders, including local mayors and Jeremy Corbyn and Tim Farron. So already this will divert attention away from the general election.
Yes, I mean, clearly it's a huge national incident, and it will demand a political response from politicians, senior police chiefs, who will no doubt convene a meeting as soon as possible. Those in charge, politicians, will want to be fully briefed on what's happened here. We are, of course, in an election campaign, and that will impact on that. We'll perhaps see campaigning suspended for several days while this is poured over in huge detail. Now, just going back, Anna, to what you were saying about where that explosion could have taken place, anyone who knows the arena will know that there are, I'm just going to point the camera while I'm talking, there are a lot of exits and huge level of steps that lead down, and there's a train station within the arena, there's a McDonald's, and some of it is classed as public space, and so it's very difficult to tell from that statement where this device went off. It would lead us to believe that it was like some kind of device that went off outside on the steps, but it's not as simple as that with the arena. There is places outside of the arena which, if you're in it, you wouldn't realise, and when you leave the arena itself, you go through rather like leaving a football stadium, some tunnels, then you go down some steps and you're outside. It could have, from my reading of it, happened anywhere between leaving the actual curtilage of the arena to the actual street outside, and that can be the space of a 5-minute walk. So but it is public area, which would feed into the idea that somebody would have not been able to get in to the arena with a device, perhaps, because there are security checks at the door of that arena, or certainly when I last went there was a security check, rather like airport checks, scanners, and people waving the scanning wands over everyone who entered. So it's very difficult to tell from that statement quite what the location was of the explosion. It's not as easy to say that it was outside. There is a buffer zone around that arena from leaving your seat to actually getting into the fresh air, which is classed as a public area, and that is still actually undercover, but nevertheless reveals a little bit more about what happened and the amount of people who would have been flooding out of there at the end of that concert. If anybody wanted to cause maximum damage and harm, then doing it while thousands of people are streaming into, being funneled into small confined areas, would have been the area to do it, and it looks very much like that has been the case at Manchester Arena tonight. The capacity of that arena is huge. It's 21,000 people, and we hear reports suggest that it was a full house there, so an astonishing amount of people streaming out of there. We've heard earlier of the scenes of panic as people heard that explosion and tried to get out of the arena, and so one must have only imagined what it was like just after that explosion went off. It is, as I say, one of, well, the biggest entertainment arena in Europe, and it is often packed out once, if not twice a week, often on a Saturday and at the end of a weekend, a Monday or a Wednesday, so it's a very busy place. As of about 10 minutes ago, we've heard that 19 people have died in this incident. We know that many more have been taken to around about the 5 hospitals that encircle Manchester City itself, and I'm just seeing in the distance there police standing next to a queue of about 10 buses, which I can't quite see, and when those buses come a little bit closer, I'll be able to see whether they are full of people, whether they're being used for a purpose or whether they're just being moved out. But they are just moving the tape from those buses. There are about 4 buses queuing up there, and I think it looks like people might have been in them. We have seen buses during incidents used as evacuation devices. We saw that. I remember seeing that during the London bombings back in 2005. Lots of red London buses being used to ferry people away from the scene. And I'm just having a quick look. These buses, to my mind, look empty, but they are being driven into the towards the arena. So I'm just speculating that they might be serving a purpose. But on the cordon here, Anna, We're about half a mile, a little bit less than half a mile from the arena, about 5 minutes walk. This police cordon is not letting anybody, even me, past. And that gives you an idea of the kind of ring of steel that's now being put up around Manchester as the police try and deal with this, what is now a very significant, serious and large-scale incident where 19 people have lost their lives, countless more have been injured, and many senior police officers will be looking at this and wondering if it's a terrorist act. The reason why I'm couching that language is that the police aren't saying that for sure. They're talking about an explosion, they're talking about an incident, but it is perhaps too early to put their cards on the table and say this is a terrorist act. But with the scale of fatalities, well, it would be hard to see it as anything else.
And certainly we've seen elsewhere, Nick, buses being driven in also to take out the walking wounded. We've seen that in other terrorist incidents in the past. You mentioned the difficulty of getting what must have been nearly 21,000 people out of that concert arena. We know that there was an emergency announcement that was made. Let's listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your time. There's no need to bunch up. There's no problems here. Just take your time and keep exiting the building. There's no need to bunch up and run. Take your time. There's no problems here. Thank you for coming and having a good time tonight. Everything is fine. Just take your time exiting the building. Thank you very much. Walk slowly. There's no need to run.
So the emergency announcement trying to reassure people to exit in a calm fashion. Live pictures, as you can see, outside the cordon. Our correspondent at the scene has just seen a number of double-decker buses go through, potentially to remove people who, of course, have difficulty in getting home. We know that the train station, Victoria train station, is completely closed, but also possibly to get walking wounded home or onto further treatment. So the latest we've had from the police is that 19 people are now confirmed dead, with around 50 others injured. Manchester Arena, in their statement, said that the incident took place outside the venue in a public space, but as our correspondent Nick Martin explained, the public space element of that might mean it's just outside the ticket hall on the way down, for example, to the station area, which is on the same side. And certainly I spoke earlier to Jenny Brewster, who'd taken her 11-year-old daughter Evie to her first ever concert. Her daughter was tired, wanted to leave early. They tried to get back to the car and they were stopped by a line of stewards who said that's not the best way back. And she is convinced that that redirection by those stewards saved her life. And certainly we've seen on social media now, people are already beginning to post pictures of those they class as missing, people they've not heard from. And there is a desperate effort now to get hold of people who have not yet been contactable. We will bring you more on this breaking news story after a short break.
Up internally. Once you get into the station, there's a box office area before you get into the arena. I don't know where these injuries occurred, but I imagine it would be between where I was stood and that box office area. Just based on gut, on what I could see, but I don't know that for certain.
So can you just explain the geography of that? Because that's interesting, because there have been other reports that perhaps this occurred somewhere near a box office. You're saying that the subway station, the tube station, actually links up with the arena?
Well, it's a railway station, so it's an overground station called Victoria Station. And yes, it and the arena effectively adjoin. So you walk from one to the other via the same route. You're sort of part of it.
And when you talk about a box office, is that a box office for the train or is that a box office for the arena itself?
No, that would be the box office for the arena. So the box office for the arena is accessible from, there's a train and a Metrolink station, again, overground tram, which link via a walkway. So the idea is you can come straight from the arena and get straight on a tram.
And Joel, I'm just getting word that the arena itself just tweeted out that this incident took place outside the venue in a public space. That's a tweet from the Manchester Arena. So just if I could just get specific on that box office that you talked about, you said someone getting off a train could walk heading toward the box office without...
You'd walk sort of 2 minutes from the train or the tram, you'd go up a flight of stairs and across a very short walkway, and you'd be at the box office of the arena. So
and there's no security...
One hub.
Is there security for before the box office, or is security, I assume, after the box office?
Yeah, I mean, it's domestic security, so it's sort of for everyday sort of stuff, like, you know, in case something goes wrong on an everyday level rather than specifically. I mean, like, there's lots of armed police in and around the streets right now, which for Manchester is extremely unusual to see. There wouldn't have been routinely any armed police on the streets. There would be low-key, and there certainly wouldn't be anyone with a weapon at all in the arena officially.
In terms of being searched, in terms of when you would be searched before going to the arena, it would be after the box office, I assume.
Yeah, box office, and there's a queue from the arena space where everyone is searched. I mean, I was covering an event there 2 days ago, and everyone gets searched going in, everyone gets patted down.
Okay.
So you've got like a public space, which is, as I say, the bit which joins with the train station, and then you've got the arena space.
So that helps in trying to...
searched and patted down going in routinely.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It helps to try to piece together what may have happened. Joel Goodman, thank you so much. I want to go back to our Shimon Prokupez, who has got more reporting. Shimon, what are you learning?
That's right, Anderson. We're just getting word into our newsroom in Washington, D.C. that the possible cause into this explosion was a suicide bomber. 3 officials who've been briefed on this investigation, 2 U.S. officials and a Western official to Pamela Brown, all have said that right now investigators on the scene believe that a suicide bomber detonated a bomb as people were leaving the venue, which then caused all of these injuries and the deaths. This is, again, it's very preliminary because investigators are still trying to piece together what happened. You know, though it is a couple of hours into this explosion, there still seems not to be 100% certainty as to what caused this. But they do believe right now that this was some kind of a terrorist act and that potentially a suicide bomber set off a bomb.
To reports of an explosion at Manchester Arena just before 10:35 p.m. A concert had been underway there, popular with a young following, Ariana Grande. The concert was just coming to an end, and if this is a terrorist incident, it was certainly designed to cause maximum injury. Let's listen now to one witness I spoke to earlier, Jenny Brewster, who was at the concert with her daughter Evie. She spoke to us a short time ago.
It was distressing. I took my daughter of 11. This was her first concert. We went, we had a great night. And as Ariana Grande was singing her last song, which was Dangerous Woman, my daughter was tired and she needed the bathroom, and she said, can we just go outside now? And so we did. We went to the bathroom, and then we said, let's go now before the rush. So we walked towards where the MEN car park is, where we were parked, and there was a row of stewards stood in a line, stopping us getting through, but they were very friendly, and they said, this isn't your best way, girls. You're best turning round. You can get to your car park that way. As I turned round, boom, one loud noise, and then we, so for the first 10 seconds, we thought about it, and we just walked with haste, and then a gentleman said, run! So we ran, and we walked down we walked quickly down the stairs. That's when people were flooding through the concert doors, and the sound was definitely coming from the main foyer, where the guests normally enter through and present their tickets. On exiting the building, we then saw crowds of people and children devastated. We went to the car, which was 10 seconds away. As soon as we got to the car, you could smell the burning. Coming out then was quite a fluid operation. There were people around us. The children were devastated. We could see police running in front of our car, people, emergency services with huge red backpacks on them running into the building. But we did manage to get away, all within about 3 or 4 minutes. But it was devastating.
Did you see anybody yourself who'd been injured, or were you too far away from that foyer area that you were describing?
Didn't see anybody, just traumatised people, but you could smell it. And to confirm, we only heard one explosion.
Did you have to walk through the foyer as you made your way to the car? In other words, did you just miss it?
We did. That line of stewards that blocked us and turned us around made a huge difference to our evening tonight.
So tell me what the difference would have been then if they hadn't been there blocking your way.
I think, thank God and thank them, because we were heading exactly to where I think it was.
Right, so they just held you up enough that you just missed it?
Oh yeah, it was a line. You couldn't reach it. They simply said, "No, this isn't the right way for you now, girls." They were directing us out to it, and they definitely saved our lives tonight.
And how do you feel, having taken your daughter to her first concert, that something like this happened there?
It's just so sad, so sad, so sad.
Were there many children there?
Those poor people. It was full of beautiful young girls and boys and families, and it's just tragic to think that such a great family evening has now ended in such horror.
We obviously don't know what caused this single loud bang that you talked about, but is it your sense that it was an explosion, given that you could smell the burning?
When I first heard it, because it sounded like it was behind closed doors, it was quite muffled, but very loud, but we knew it wasn't in our bit. So we just kind of walked away and looked at each other as if to think, that was strange. Then when the man shouted, "Run," with real panic, we did. We came out, smelt it, and then it sunk into me what this was.
Jenny Brewster speaking to me a short time ago, who obviously managed to escape that loud blast with her young daughter Evie, 11 years old, and at her first concert. I fear they will both remember that for many years to come. Press Association are reporting that Greater Manchester Police have now carried out that controlled explosion in the Cathedral Gardens area near Manchester Arena. Was this a second suspected device? We will await official confirmation of that, but certainly as we look at the scene there is a large cordon placed around Manchester Arena. British Transport Police also reporting on this incident, saying the Victoria Station is closed, unlikely to open for some time to come, certainly. And the AFP news agency saying that controlled explosion is being carried out. Some confusing information about whether or not that has happened, but certainly we knew that it was imminent. Ashish Joshi is here with me, and at the moment, Ashish, social media is full of, first of all, people offering homes for people. I know Andy Burnham, the mayor for Greater Manchester, is saying follow hashtag Room for Manchester, with hotels and local people offering refuge. But also people are trying to track down those who are at that concert, aren't they?
Social media is full of photographs. We can't, say whether these are all genuine, but certainly appear to be genuine. Lots of people who were at this concert. We heard from the witnesses you've been speaking to tonight, Ariana Grande, huge following among teenagers, younger children who have been separated from their parents, so distraught parents waiting to hear from their children. Lots of people are posting pictures of friends who are at the concert who they haven't heard from this evening. It could be for a number of reasons, but certainly they want to know if their friends are safe. The good news is lots of people who have been posting these photos are then reposting to say that their friends have been found. Reports that there are hotels which have taken in lots of children who are waiting to be reunited with their parents. Manchester taxi drivers offering free rides to anyone because we know that the transport situation is quite dire. And as you were saying there earlier, the Room for Manchester hashtag is trending. Certainly people offering accommodation to anyone who's stuck in the city tonight as they try and come to terms with what is certainly a devastating incident. 19 people confirmed dead, 50 injured. The hospitals are already warning that they are diverting all resources towards Manchester Arena. Certainly many people being taken to local hospitals, and they are asking all non-life-threatening injuries not to go to hospital, people who are not associated with what happened at the Manchester Arena, not to contact the hospitals. So certainly emergency services, including the police, stretched tonight, but certainly the witnesses we've spoken to seem to suggest that they are coping with the situation.
Let's just listen now to more reaction from people who were at that concert.
Well, it was a massive bang, and then everyone just started running towards us, screaming and crying, and didn't know what had gone on. So everyone was like trampling over us, and it was just awful.
Yeah, we were just really confused. There was a big bang, we could smell smoke, everyone was screaming and crying, and we were just told to come around here and didn't even know what was going on.
And did you see anyone being treated in an ambulance or anything?
No, it was just like what people had said, like they'd seen people with blood on them and stuff like that, and there's been a bomb, and then everyone was saying there was a gunshot, so we didn't know what had gone on, really.
And like, what was going through your mind when you heard that loud explosion?
Obviously, we were scared, weren't we?
Really scared because we didn't know what it was. We were kind of hoping it wasn't the worst, but then it ended up being the worst sort of thing.
Yeah. And how would you describe like what people were like? Was it just like sheer panic? Was it everyone?
Yeah, everyone was just panicking and running towards the door.
Never seen anything like it. It was just like really scared.
Yeah.
So nice.
And obviously we've now heard from the police that people have died and it's terrorist related, they believe.
Yeah.
Even more shocking when you hear that.
I know, like we just literally, because I mean, we googled it as soon as we got out, and like people were saying that it was just a speaker gone or something. So I sort of felt relieved, but then afterwards, obviously, all of this has come out, and it's just horrible.
And can I get your names, please?
Yeah, it's Jess.
Jess there talking to our reporter at the scene there. Live pictures, as you can see, outside the cordon, Manchester Arena in the distance down that road. Let's show you some new pictures we've just had in.
Quick, Corey. Which way? Come on. Corey needs to get round. Corey, get round this way. Come on. Come on. Corey. Come on, lad.
Well, desperation to get away as quickly as possible. Now, this has been... Yes, it's been very interesting looking at social media and at US reports throughout the evening. They've been ahead of the game in terms of what we know, and certainly multiple reports are suggesting... Apologies, I think you've lost my microphone. We will fix that. I'll just borrow Ashish's microphone if that's okay. Yes, I was just saying that it's been interesting watching US media reports throughout the evening, that they have been ahead in terms of reporting the news. And certainly 2 US officials, reported now by the Reuters news agency, say that it was a suicide bomber that was suspected in the Manchester explosion. Other reports I've seen that multiple US officials have suspected that this was a suicide bomber. Ashish Joshi is here. Let me bring in Amy Scarisbrick now, who's on the line. She's a reporter from Key 103 and is at the scene for us. What is the scene where you are then, Amy?
Well, the streets of Manchester have completely fallen silent. I'm at the cordon, which is at the back of the arena. It's by the Arndale Centre, if you know Manchester, and there's a Harvey Nichols store, and basically police have set up a base there. There's around about 60, 70 police vans. The sky is just lit up with blue and red at the moment because they've all got the flashing lights on. And around about 5 minutes ago, there was a loud bang in the sky, and I got pushed back by police away from the cordon. I'm not really too sure what was happening at that point. But other than that, it's like a ghost town here at the moment. The streets have been completely evacuated. The cordon is really, really large. It's about a 3-mile cordon. And like I said, very, very silent, eerie scenes here, just emergency services everywhere.
Yes, there's certainly been reports of a controlled explosion, and you might be able to help us with the geography at this, at Cathedral Gardens. Is that nearby?
Yes, it's right by me. I'm standing by a Premier Inn, which is by the Arndale Centre, and I felt the ground shake, and like somebody started screaming, and people started putting their hands over their ears. There's like a few people gathered here, but not many. Like I said, it's very quiet, and I felt like the ground shake, and it must have been this controlled explosion. I've never heard a bang as big as that.
British police say that a controlled explosion in Manchester not a suspicious item. So that's the latest from them. We are expecting we will have a news conference from the police very shortly, so we will have more on that. But Amy, what is the mood in Manchester? Certainly we know that people have been trying to help people get home, help people find a room. Local politicians have been responding to this. But is there a sense of shock there that this incident would happen, and at a concert attended by so many young children?
Absolutely. I mean, the people I've seen, they just look completely dazed, almost zombie-like. Their expressions are just completely blank. They're holding hands, they're hugging each other. I saw young girls wearing pink Ariana Grande T-shirts, just crying and holding on to their parents. We've spoken to, a family who, their children, it was their first ever concert to Ariana Grande. And me, myself, I'm a bit shook up. I've actually just come from the Take That concert in Liverpool, neighbouring Liverpool, that was doing exactly the same time as Ariana Grande, to rush here. And it's just, you go to a concert to see, a show, and you feel safe, and you don't feel safe at all, really, at the moment.
Amy Scarisbrick, reporter there from Key 103. Thank you very much indeed for your time. So, Greater Manchester Police confirming there that the precautionary controlled explosion in Cathedral Gardens, they have confirmed it was abandoned clothing and not a suspicious item. We will have more, though, on this breaking news story after this short break.
How loud it was?
Well, we could feel the explosion as well as hear it. It was just like, it was muffled, but it was just like a huge boom.
Wait, when you said you could feel... Sorry, when you said you could feel it, are you talking about kind of an air blast or shaking of the ground?
Just like a shaking of the ground, possibly.
Okay. And...
you could just feel it. It was very, very loud.
Our understanding is that the explosion took place around 10:35 p.m., according to Manchester Police. Were there many people in the area where you were? Had many people already exited the venue?
Well, we were just at the side. People were... But as we got out, literally outside is the arena, where hundreds and hundreds of people were just coming down. There's sort of like two lots of steps. They were coming down the steps onto the main walkway to leave, but they were just all evacuating quickly by the time we got outside. So everyone left. As soon as they heard it, everyone seemed to be going.
And were police already at the scene when you got there?
No, not at the time, but very, very soon afterwards there was ambulance, police. I don't think people really knew what was going on. The sellers outside were still selling T-shirts. We were having to get past them and stuff like that. People didn't seem, and then all of a sudden there was panic and everyone just ran everywhere.
Well, Paula, it's lovely that you reacted the way you did to try to help those kids and get them to a safe place and able to contact their parents. Thank you so much. I'm glad you and the people you're with are okay on your anniversary. Jamie Waller was at the concert, joins us now by phone as well. If you could, Jamie, just explain what you heard and saw.
She'd just finished singing, and she walked off the stage, and we all went down to go out. and there was just this huge explosion, this huge bang, and everyone just like looked at each other, and everyone just ran. We just needed to get out because we didn't know what was happening. It was just a mad panic.
So as soon as you heard this explosion, you knew this was not part of the concert itself?
Yeah, we knew something was wrong.
And so had the concert had ended, Ariana Grande had stopped singing, she was off the stage?
Yeah, she just finished doing Dangerous Woman, and then she left. And she ran off the stage, and then we all obviously the lights came on, everything was finished, and then everyone started to leave, and then that's when the bang happened.
And what happened after the bang? You said people started to rush?
Yeah, we just all ran. We all just wanted to get out because it was just a mad panic. We didn't know what was happening. The first thought was we need to get out of here just in case anything happens again.
Was there any announcement made at any point as you were trying to get out?
No, nothing. We were all just, we didn't know what was happening at all.
How difficult was it to actually get out? I mean, it looks obviously very chaotic. Obviously, a lot of people are very frightened. There's kids there. How difficult was it to get out?
Me and my sister were out in seconds. Like, everyone was on the same page. Everyone just wanted to leave. So everyone was just running in the same direction.
And as you left, what did you do?
I just kept going. And the police were like, just carry on moving. So we just followed the crowd, and then we found a place, so we stood, and then all the police started rushing all the ambulances, and there was people on the floor, and all the paramedics came around, and we were just waiting then until we knew a little bit more information.
And I assume how close were you to the train station?
I think we were above it. I'm not completely sure because it's just a state of shock, but we were literally probably meters away from it.
Well, Jamie, I'm glad you were able to get out quickly, and thank you very much for talking to us tonight. A very difficult night for so many of those who were there. Late word on that controlled explosion that we told you about a few minutes ago. According to police, the item in question, which they detonated, was abandoned clothing, nothing dangerous. And we're continuing to be here with Phil Mudd. Phil, obviously that's a good thing in that there's not, it seems like, more than this one particular incident or more than one attempt.
Sure, but anytime you're going down this road and you've heard this referred to as a potential terrorism investigation, that's not a suggestion, that practitioners believe that's what happened. It's just you don't have time to waste in the event that there's a broader network. You talked about just one potential device here. You still have a lot of questions. Who trained them? Who radicalized them? Where'd the money come from? You can have a conspiracy even if you have a one-off attack, especially with a device that looks this significant. I'm looking at this saying, are we sure if this is a single suicide bomber? He had the capability to build a design like this with this level of lethality by himself. You've got to go to conspiracy even if you have no evidence to suggest that yet.
How likely is it that somebody built their own device, or was that usually the device built by somebody else?
In this case, I'm going to look at this saying, if you have a one-off, that to me...
Explosion either right inside or just outside the arena, just when the concert was ending at 10:30 p.m. this evening. Panic and confusion, sheer terror inside, and of course, an extremely worrying time for all the parents who have been separated from their children who have gone to this concert and just want to know that their children are safe. But we know, because if you look at the blueprint of a terrorist attack, large venues like this, and we had the Bataclan, a music venue in Paris. So again, it's a concert. They would have known it's been packed. Some people, and I don't want to really speculate on this too much, some people who were at the concert saying they went there and they didn't have their bags checked or anything. I can't confirm that. I don't know what happened and what security measures were in place, but certainly Greater Manchester Police were primed. They're ready for this. We've seen them carry out very public exercises, and as part of one of the country's leading police forces, they responded to this very, very quickly. The first reports breaking on social media, Greater Manchester Police were on site, very careful in their use of language, not to call it an attack or a bomb or an explosion, but just to say that they were en route to an incident. Once they were there, they established that this was a serious incident, and now they've escalated that to saying it's probably a terrorist attack.
And the US networks are rolling on this. They are also in some respects ahead of the game. They've been reporting information which turns out to be true here, including, and the Reuters news agency now reporting this, as others already have, the US officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, say that initial signs point to a suicide bomber as the cause of this blast at this music venue. Clearly, that has not been corroborated or confirmed by anybody here in the UK as
no,
yet.
The US networks went with that line very quickly, and you're absolutely right. They had the figure. They had the figure of 19 to 20, maybe an hour after the incident. So that would suggest there is a lot of cooperation, information sharing going on between the British police, as you would expect with somebody like Ariana Grande here in this country. You can't underestimate just what a big superstar she is. The Americans, they would have been concerned that there would have been American citizens there, but certainly the American journalists who have had access to some information seems to be absolutely right. Now, they're going with the line that it's a suicide bomber, and they're also suggesting that it was a nail bomb. Some photos on social media, the nature of the injuries would suggest that that might be the case. But we haven't had that corroborated by any official agencies in the UK.
And this, of course, is the, if not one of, if not the biggest music venues in Europe. We heard the emergency tannoy there, trying to keep people to get out of this building in a calm and collected way, despite the fact that we've heard from the screams, there was certainly a degree of panic, wasn't there?
It's sheer terror inside the concert venue itself. You can hear the screams, people would have heard the explosion. And the first thing people do, and not just there, but we saw the pictures of the train station where people ran to, but certainly the stewards trying to do their best to shepherd people away from the arena. We saw people who made it to their cars, who left the venue, and it was exceptionally difficult for the police because they had to treat the people who had been injured, find out what had happened, make the area safe, and really look after the people who were going away, as well as not panicking people who had been separated from their families. So an extremely difficult night for the Greater Manchester Police and all the emergency services who have attended the Manchester Arena this evening.
Ashish Joshi, thank you very much indeed. So we continue our coverage of the breaking news, the devastating news, in fact, from Manchester Arena, that 19 people have been killed, around 50 have been injured in what at the moment is being treated as a terrorist incident by North West Counter-Terror Command. Back with more on this in just a moment.
Many plots with just individuals who plan to be suicide bombers. We've also seen plots from networks, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, where that's the case. I don't think that gets us anywhere closer to knowing whether this was a single individual who was responsible for this or a wider cell. I think those answers are going to come in the hours ahead. The first we'll know about it is if there are major raids across Manchester, and what we hear from the results of those. I think given the fact they'll be going through all the CCTV, trying to figure out where this person was living, that there are likely to be raids in the hours ahead in different locations, perhaps in the UK. We often see that after these kinds of incidents. But this appears to have been a major mass casualty terrorist attack, and this country has not suffered one of those since the London bombings all the way back in 2005. And that's really a testament to the professionalism of British security services, who are regarded by many of their peers around the world as best in class. They put a lot of resources, a lot of technology behind preventing what we saw play out just a few hours ago in Manchester. But given the scale of the threat, they cannot stop all kind of attacks getting through. We saw a terrorist attack getting through just a few weeks ago on a bridge in Westminster, and the reality is that there will be more attacks that will get through in the months and years ahead, especially as ISIS loses ground in Syria and Iraq, and more of these foreign fighters start gravitating back to Europe. People who are trained killers coming back with an axe to grind against countries like Britain who have been launching airstrikes in Syria and Iraq.
And Phil Mudd, I mean, in terms of an investigation like this, who would be taking the lead on it? I mean, is this Manchester Police at this point, or is this...
British Internal Security Service. You should think of this in two parallel paths. The police and the Manchester Police are terrific. There's a lot of extremist activity in Manchester. They're going to have informant networks where as soon as they get a photo off CCTV, they can go into those networks. But the British Security Service has a broader responsibility. You got to look through masses of data to determine whether other people around the UK are communicating or were involved in this. So you have to have the immediate investigation of what happened in Manchester, which will be supported by security services outside the Manchester Police, and then the expanding investigation. Broader UK cell going back to was somebody overseas involved in supporting this or even just radicalizing this individual.
And we are just minutes away, we believe, from this press conference from Manchester Police. Paul, you know, you and I have talked a lot about, in the wake of the Bataclan attacks, the series of attacks around there in Paris, about the difficulties that French intelligence faces, certainly that Belgian intelligence faces, the lack of coordination we have seen. Where do the British stand in relation to that?
Well, there's excellent coordination between MI5, the Domestic Security Service, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the various British police forces, especially the Metropolitan Police Force here in London, which is really the lead force in the UK when it comes to the terrorism threat. They work in each other's buildings every day. There's a lot of routine sharing of intelligence. There's a hurdle, however, when it comes to sharing across Europe, when it comes to sharing between the different intelligence services in the European Union, the information coming, say, from the French to the British or vice versa, or from the Germans to the French. I've heard a lot of frustrations from a lot of officials right across Europe that information is just not coming in sufficient quantity and sufficiently quickly, given the gravity of the threat facing Europe over the last few years, and not enough yet has been done to improve that intelligence sharing, Anderson. The one thing the United Kingdom has got going for it compared to the continental Europe right now is it's much more difficult for these Islamist extremists to purchase on the black market or in any other way AK-47s, Kalashnikovs in the UK. Much harder to get guns on the streets of Manchester, on the streets of London, than on the streets of Amsterdam, on the streets of Brussels, on the streets of Paris. And of course, in Paris on that night, back in November of 2015, Anderson, that was a coordinated gun and bomb attack on a stadium, on the Bataclan concert hall, and on those cafes. We have only in Manchester at this time seen what appears to have been a single suicide bomber carry out an attack.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, we're bringing the latest developments from the United Kingdom, what police are treating as a suspected terrorist bombing there, a possible suicide detonation, a deadly explosion just outside an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England. It happened just before 10:35 p.m. local time. An eyewitness tells CNN the blast happened outside the Manchester Arena shortly after the concert ended. Police say 19 people have been killed, approximately 50 people have been hurt. And again, authorities are treating it as a possible terrorist attack until they learn otherwise. We are expecting to hear from them very shortly. We've been giving a heads up. We're supposed to be right at the top of the hour. It is now just 2 minutes past that. I want to go first to CNN's Phil Black, who has been monitoring this now for several hours from London. Phil, what's the latest you're hearing?
Well, Anderson, we're getting a much clearer picture of what happened here, and I think that the interesting information that's come through more recently is the confirmation from the venue itself, the Manchester Arena. It's confirmed that the blast did in fact take place outside of the venue, which confirms an observation that I know we've made through the evening. Looking at the video from within inside the arena, it didn't show any obvious point of detonation. There was no smoke. It didn't look like a bomb had gone off in that area. Now the venue itself is confirming that yes, the blast, or the incident as it describes it, took place just outside the venue, just outside the concert just after the concert had finished, just as people were leaving the venue. That's what witnesses have told us as well. One blast, and according to the police, as you touched on there, 19 confirmed dead as a result of this, as many as 50 or more injured. And we know that many of these were young people, teenagers, children with parents and so forth, who'd spent the night enjoying Ariana's concert just inside, Anderson.
of events, Phil Black. We continue to monitor this, waiting that press conference. Andy James is on the phone. He was there with his 9-year-old brother. Andy, thanks so much for being with us. You were at the concert itself?
Yeah, so we got to the concert at about 7 p.m. And then had a good time, everything like that. It was really good. It was his first concert that he'd ever been to. And then I think it was about 10:40, the explosion happened, and we was walking up the stairs just about to leave in the exact same direction as where the actual explosion happened.
So you heard the explosion very clearly?
Oh, yeah. It mustn't have been, 40 feet away from where we were. And we heard the explosion happen. The boom rattled in my chest, and, you could feel it, in the ground, and it was just horrific. So we just
Andy,
Andy, yeah?
Can you tell me what direction, you said you were that close to the explosion, you actually felt it in your chest. What direction were you walking in, and what direction do you think the explosion took place in? Because there's been some who have said it may have taken place close to a box office on away from the train station.
Yeah, so it was in we've heard from quite a few people that it was in the foyer of where, near the box office of where it was actually happening, and we actually came through the entrance of where, that bomb actually, or the explosion, sorry, whatever it was, we came through where that actually happened when we actually came into the concert. And it happened, it was the top left hand of the side of the arena, and, at the top of the stairs just there.
So, Andy, let me ask you, you said you came through that way. What sort of security, did you pick up a ticket at the box office? And then I assume you were checked for security at some point. What sort of security did you go through after that?
So when I had the tickets already printed off, and we was coming through the main entrance of the arena, and, the security was fine. People, they were checking bags and everything like that. So it was all, it all looked, seemingly normal is what you would expect.
And as you left, what did you see?
So we left to go in the opposite direction of where the explosion happened. We was going up there. There was a stampede of people. I was trying to help people up as I was leaving. And we was just going in the total opposite direction of where it was happening. We had to go up the stairwell and back through where the toilets were. And as we got outside, we was just sort of looking around to sort of see where we were and get our bearings. And then there was another sort of boom. I don't know whether the second one was an actual explosion or there were balloons in the concert, and they were obviously constantly going on, being popped. And I just told my little brother that this is what it was. It wasn't an explosion, it was the balloons, but he's 9 years old, he knows what goes on in the world, and it's such a shame, really.
How is your little brother doing? I mean, I can't imagine. This is his first concert. It's scary for any 9-year-old to be in a crowd of 20,000 people who are panicked. How is he?
Yeah. Well, he's home in bed asleep now, thank God. I was, ushering him out of the arena. I had my hand on his chest, and his heart was beating so fast, and I thought, I'm responsible for him, because we was walking up to the other exit, and all that was going through your head was, there are going to be people with guns there, there's going to be another explosion. Your mind just switches into a different mode, and I just really, really felt sorry for him, thinking, this is his first concert, and this has happened now. And I had my friends messaging me and texting me, asking me if I was okay, and I didn't even know what was happening before, anyone else knew. But
how difficult was it for you to get out and to get home? I mean, you had 20,000 people leaving this arena all at once, police moving in.
So when we was leaving, everyone was just, going into one direction. So it was just I was just keeping hold of him to make sure he was, right by me. And as soon as we got outside, I just bolted in the other direction and just thought, because I know the city centre, I work in the city centre, so I know it, like the back of my hand. And I just went down via a couple more shops, and because we were going to get the tram home, but the tram goes through the arena of where it was happening, so there was just no chance of that. So I called our dad, and he came and picked us up.
Oh. Well, Andy, I'm so glad you and your brother are okay, and I'm glad you're such a good big brother that he had you there by his side. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you.
A short time ago, authorities carried out a controlled explosion. They detonated a suspicious item in an open area around Cathedral Gardens, which is not far from the arena. We understand from law enforcement it turned out to be old clothing, nothing dangerous. Again, we hope to hear from police shortly. We were told that there's supposed to be a press conference any moment. We'll obviously bring that to you as it happens. With us this hour, monitoring developments, and developments are moving quickly. I mean, we began about an hour and 10 minutes ago not really having a clear understanding of what, if anything, had happened, whether it was just some sort of something went wrong in the concert, some sort of device, and that people panicked. Now, according to the reporting of Pamela Brown and Shimon Prokupecz from CNN, from 3 different sources, 2 U.S. sources, 1 Western, who have been briefed on the matter, that they believe now they're looking at the possibility of a suicide bomber. A number of the eyewitness reports, and again, you have to be cautious about any kind of eyewitness reports, but a number of eyewitnesses have talked about the explosion seeming to come from somewhere around a box office area, which is also accessed to an above-ground train station, I believe it was Victoria Station, that's connected to this arena. The arena itself has tweeted out that the explosion took place outside the arena. They obviously wanted to point out that their security procedures were in place. You just heard from Andy James, a concertgoer who brought his brother, his 9-year-old brother, to his first concert. That they went through security. Bags were checked, as one would anticipate, not only at a big concert like this in the U.S., but certainly in Great Britain, which has seen a history of terrorism. I want to check in with CNN's Shimon Prokupecz, who has been working his sources, bringing us up to date. Shimon, if you could just, anything new you've learned, and if you could just bring us up to date on what all you're reporting so far.
That's right, Anderson. So what we've learned through the last hour or so is that U.S. officials who have been briefed on the investigation, it's 2 U.S. officials, both to Pamela Brown, Evan Perez, and I, saying that the likely cause of this explosion was a suicide bomber. Officials believe that the person who was wearing this, whatever it may be, we don't know if it's a suicide vest or some other device that was used, did this as people were leaving the concert and caused some of the injuries. People were running, and it's believed that some of them who were running were injured. It appears now that some of the people may have been injured by the blast. The U.S. officials who have been briefed on this say they don't believe right now that anyone else was involved. That it was likely just one bomber, but they're obviously still continuing their investigation. They're still trying to figure out if this person was attached to anyone. Was this a cell? Who may have helped make the components of this bomb? Who may have helped bring this person to the scene? They believe it is a male who was the bomber. So still a lot to work through. And really right now, U.S. officials who are being briefed all are just telling us that it's all very preliminary, even though this happened, like over 3 hours ago. But this is still preliminary. They're still trying to gather information. Folks at the State Department and other intelligence agencies throughout the U.S. are being briefed, are being updated continuously. We don't know anything about the victims, if there are any U.S. Victims. So we're just sort of still working through it, still trying to keep things updated and trying to find out more information right now.
Yeah, we're obviously also trying to find out information about the status of the 50 or so people who have been injured, wounded. Certainly our thoughts and our prayers are with them and their families.
Through their foot, and that does seem to be the case, as consistent with that kind of, but whether it's a nail bomb or just a bomb that has somehow created quite a lot of shrapnel, we don't know at this stage. But yeah, a lot of people are coming here. There's ambulances been coming in and out. Some families going home in taxis now, having perhaps gone in to see their loved ones. I've seen one individual on his phone still trying to actually work out the whereabouts of a friend. And, there's still a lot of confusion. This is still early days for some people. They don't yet know exactly what has happened to everybody.
Jason, we're just hearing that the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Ian Hopkins, is expected to give a statement on the steps of their headquarters at about 2:40, so less than half an hour, we understand, and no doubt they will give more details if they can. But this has real significance, doesn't it, for the cabinet members who may well need to attend an emergency cabinet meeting and who should be on the road campaigning, and will it indeed have implications for the general election itself?
Well, as you know, Anna, we've been travelling with Jeremy Corbyn's team. I have been in touch with him. He's obviously aware of what's going on, and this is right in the middle of the election campaign. We're 2 weeks from the actual vote. There's a whole raft of campaign events that have been organised for tomorrow and in the coming days. I suspect that there will be rethinking around that. Obviously, the news is going to be dominated by what's happened here. If it is a terrorist attack, it will have been the second biggest terrorist attack in the UK, certainly the biggest since the London bombing attacks, where 52 people were killed on the underground network and in a bus in London. And we do have a whole range of events that certainly we were supposed to be at tomorrow. We were supposed to be in Birmingham. I know that Jeremy Corbyn, for example, is in Doncaster tonight. There was a raft of things that would have been arranged and will no doubt not happen tomorrow. You can't imagine politicians going around talking about policy when something like this has happened. So it will be disruptive to the election campaign. I guess, you can talk about examples such as Joe Cox's murder was disruptive to the referendum campaign in the same way. This, is a huge national event. And as you say, you would expect there to be some kind of Cobra meeting. I have been talking to people at Scotland Yard. Obviously there is a
Jason, I'm just going to, just on that very issue, actually, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, we've been waiting for a statement from her. These are her thoughts. So the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has said her thoughts are with the victims and families of those affected in what is being treated by the police as an appalling terrorist incident, a terrorist attack, rather. I don't know if there'll be more of that to come. That's certainly just one line from her. But certainly her attention will be diverted to this in what has been a weak and wobbly couple of days for her. That is the accusation, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously going to divert everyone in politics' attention. I've been trying to make contact with various politicians throughout the course of the evening, most of them just waiting to absorb the news, waiting to hear what's happened. Obviously, Andy Burnham, who is the new mayor of this, the Metro mayor of this town, has been tweeting about this, talking about how people have been coming together, offering accommodation for those people who have been affected by this, talking about the solidarity of the city, taxis dropping people off, free rides and things like that. Really just not talking about politics. I think the key thing at this stage is obviously the campaigning stops here and now. How long that situation lasts for in this very crucial election period is difficult to gauge at this stage, but the Prime Minister obviously has a job to do. The Home Secretary has a job to do to oversee, no doubt, the Cobra meetings. If this is a terrorist attack, there will be a suspect out there, there will be a police operation, they will be trying to deal with that, and that takes some attention. All attention has been focused on the election for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and suddenly there is this massive event that they are going to have to look into. So yeah, it's very difficult to gauge how long. I mean, if you look at the referendum after the murder of Joe Cox, there was about 3 or 4 days, and it was disruptive to the campaign, and no doubt this will be, and rightly so, because there are huge events to consider here. There's obviously the pain and suffering of the families, but also the job to be done with the Home Secretary, dealing with the police,
as I said earlier, as an appalling terrorist attack. She's taken some time, certainly, to issue a statement. We heard earlier from Jeremy Corbyn, who you say you are following, also condemning this terrorist attack, and Tim Farron as well. A little bit more from Theresa May. She says her thoughts are with the victims and the families of those affected. And certainly at this stage, Jason, we know that some 19 people are confirmed dead and around 50 are injured, some of whom, of course, will be being treated where you are.
Yeah, that's right. So we got that confirmation through about, about an hour ago now, 19 dead and 50 injured. So, yeah, 3 times as many injured. And there's a few hospitals around here that are treating the injured. There were literally dozens of ambulances down at the scene. They've gone now, but one of the ambulances came in only about 10 minutes ago, and we've seen families around here distraught, looking distressed. There's a family coming towards me now, and maybe I will just see. Do you mind talking to us about what happened? Oh, you weren't involved? Okay. I mean, obviously, there are other things going on here as well. This is a hospital that's working, all sorts of things happening at the time. We've been quite, obviously, we're not approaching people unless they want to talk to us. We're not trying to shove cameras in their faces. But I have spoken to some of the people who have been involved in this, who were inside when the explosion went off. And as I was telling you a short while ago, a couple of teenagers whose grandfather was actually in the room when the explosion happened and got a shrapnel wound to his face and is staying here tonight. I don't know exactly how many of those 50 injured are in this particular hospital tonight, but it does seem that from the eyewitness reports that we've heard that this was a fairly substantial explosion, enough to blow people off their feet and to cause injuries such as shrapnel wounds to people, and no doubt some of those injuries are quite serious.
Indeed so. For the moment, Jason, thank you very much indeed. We'll take a short break, but certainly we are expecting now a news conference from the Chief Constable coming up shortly. We'll stay tuned for that.
The probable suicide bomber. A U.S. official said suicide bombing is now considered to be the likely reason for the blast. So that is a major step based from what we have heard now from Pamela Brown and Evan Perez. And I just want to repeat that. A Western law enforcement official telling CNN that a man at the scene in Manchester has been identified as the probable suicide bomber. A U.S. official said suicide bombing is now considered to be the likely reason for the blast. Steve Hall, you've been monitoring this as well. You know, it starts to move quickly from here. It seems like they have some sort of identification, very possibly from, at the very least, they may even have video now at this point of the individual.
Yeah, and this is where Paul was saying a very interesting thing just a few minutes ago. This is where the cooperation, not only among the internal law enforcement and intelligence services inside the UK, but also importantly, their connectivity to intelligence and law enforcement services across Europe and indeed across the world become critically important because you can triage and try to figure out what's going on, you know, right there on the scene at the moment. And I would defer to folks like Phil, who have got a lot more experience in this, dealing with these sort of situations right up and close. But there's going to be, you know, hours, days, and weeks ahead where the sharing of intelligence and the sharing of this information to understand not only what happened here, but with the specific goal of trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future, or if there's a plan afoot, at least you'll know what to look for. The other thing that Paul said was fascinating, which is absolutely true, is the increased usage of these point-to-point encryption systems that are commercially available. Anybody can download them from the app store of your choice, which really give terrorists and others who are trying to hide from the intercept capabilities of nation states like GCHQ on the British side and NSA. It's really pretty good protection, and has thwarted the attempts of intelligence and law enforcement to predict when the next attack is going to be. So that's a real growing problem. It's this clash that we have between open societies. How much are you going to monitor your citizens? How much are you going to be Big Brother and trying to figure out what's going on in citizens' communications, their movements, whether they're subject to searches right on the streets, all of which provide you better protection against terrorist attacks, but also which encroach to a certain extent on the liberties that those of us who live in democratic societies enjoy, which is precisely one of the things that I think terrorists are hoping to increase the tension there. So it's as this continues, it'll be interesting to see how all those threads play out.
Yeah, and just moments ago, Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May put out a statement, and it says in part, we are working to establish the full details of what is being treated by the police as an appalling terrorist attack. All our thoughts are with the victims and the families of those who have been affected. And we had been told that there would be a press conference about 20 minutes ago, so we are waiting. Obviously, police are incredibly busy right now, so it's understandable that this would be pushed back. But we obviously want to bring that to you live from Manchester Police as soon as they hold that press conference, and continue to be joined by Steve Hall, Paul Cruikshank, terrorism expert, Tom Fuentes, formerly with the FBI, and Andy and Phil Mudd as well. Tom, I mean, you're just joining us now. It does seem like kind of the pieces are now becoming clearer and clearer.
Well, I think they're becoming a little more clear, Anderson, but it's still very, very early in this. And, a big factor, and I heard Phil mention it earlier, will be the type of bomb, how it was made, what bomb-making school basically the person followed, what kind of explosive material, the forensics that'll be done at the scene to get the explosive powder or residue back to the laboratory and determine what's the exact chemical composition of that. That'll help identify possible bomb makers.
This is a dumb question, but why would a bomb maker have such a distinctive signature that they could be identifiable over time?
Well, because when you're learning how to make a bomb, it's not like learning to be a French chef. If you make a bomb and at the end of the day have all 10 fingers, you stay with that recipe, and that creates the signature. And this is true for bomb-making schools and for the chemicals that are involved. So you see the bombs that have come out of Yemen, typically PETN, and they're made a certain way, and the wiring is done a certain way, the type of materials used to construct it. And then you see other schools that teach using different chemicals or different packaging, let's say, or different shrapnel with the bomb. So it's usually pretty distinctive. Or off the internet recipes as well. We've had that. We've had individuals make bombs all by themselves. Big case in Canada in 2006, the Toronto 18. That individual made the first bomb by himself, detonated it, videoed it so he could use that as a recruiting tool. And then he used bigger and bigger amounts of the explosive, testing it out in the wooded area outside of Toronto. And then at the end, when he was getting ready to make an enormous bomb that would have been 3 times the size of the bomb used in Oklahoma City, that's when the police thwarted the case.
And Phil, we should point out, we don't know what kind of device, based on reporting from Evan Perez, Pamela Brown, they believe it's likely a suicide bomber. But again, we don't know if that means a suicide vest, some sort of device on the person.
Through the foyer as you made your way to the car? In other words, did you just miss it?
We did. That line of stewards that blocked us and turned us around made a huge difference to our evening tonight.
So tell me what the difference would have been then if they hadn't been there blocking your way.
I think, thank God and thank them, because we were heading exactly to where I think it was.
Right, so they just held you up enough that you just missed it?
Oh yeah, it was a line. You couldn't reach it. They simply said, "No, this isn't the right way for you now, girls." They were directing us out to it, and they definitely saved our lives tonight.
And how do you feel, having taken your daughter to her first concert, that something like this happened there?
It's just so sad, so sad, so sad.
Were there many children there?
Those poor people. It was full of beautiful young girls and boys and families, and it's just tragic to think that such a great family evening has now ended in such horror.
We obviously don't know what caused this single loud bang that you talked about, but is it your sense that it was an explosion, given that you could smell the burning?
When I first heard it, because it sounded like it was behind closed doors, it was quite muffled, but very loud, but we knew it wasn't in our bit. So we just kind of walked away and looked at each other as if to think, that was strange. Then when the man shouted, "Run," with real panic, we did. We came out, smelt it, and then then it sunk into me what this was.
So a concert full of lovely young girls and boys who were there to see their idol, a massive US pop star, Ariana Grande, and it turns to this: 19 dead, 50 injured. The Prime Minister, the full statement now: "We are working to establish the full details of what is being treated by the police as an appalling terrorist attack. All our thoughts are with the victims and the families of those who have been affected." And a Tory source then confirming that the Prime Minister's general election campaign is being suspended. Back with more news in just a moment. We will be hearing soon from the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police.
From police able to put together armed robberies or other types of criminality. People with access to weapons, explosives potentially from criminal contacts. And the fact that so many people with this background have joined ISIS, so many people with this background have acted on behalf of ISIS, has really given the terrorist group more firepower when it comes to its campaign of terrorism against Europe, against the West. Anderson.
And again, we are expecting some kind of on-camera briefing from authorities in Manchester. Our preliminary word is we'll be hearing from Ian Hopkins. He's the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, the British equivalent of an American police chief or commissioner. A moment ago, I spoke with a man named Sam Ward, who lives by the arena, and he gave us as good a picture as any of what happened and what he was witnessing at that moment. Let's listen. And Sam, can you just explain what you heard and if you saw anything?
Yeah, so we heard an extremely loud bang. It was really sharp, really sudden, nothing like I've ever heard in the city centre before. Sorry, just as you was talking then, we just had 7 ambulances exit the Manchester Central Fire Station, all with blue lights and sirens flashing, and really rushed down to the arena. I'm not too sure what's just happened, but there was a large amount of ambulances just left the venue then. I'm currently looking at a roadblock. There's at least another 25 ambulances positioned on the pavement, just almost literally sat there waiting. There's 5 or 6 fire engines that I can see, all with the crew stood by just as if they're waiting to be given the nod again to just go. A very, very, very large police presence, all from tactical aid units through to armed response, just to general police. I don't know if you can hear the sirens, but something is kicking off again, whether it's a second. It seems to be coming in waves, all the convoys. None of the vehicles seem to be moving on their own. They all seem to be 5 or 6 deep at any one time. The firemen are actually running into the fire station now. I'm not too sure what's happening. It's just absolutely mental at the moment.
So, Sam, about how far away from this arena do you live, or are you?
I'm 200 meters. 200 meters from the arena, and I'm about 100 meters away from the city centre fire station, which is a very large city centre fire station. They've got two forecourts plus an overspill car park, which is all currently being occupied from everything from Salvation Army vehicles all the way through to the ambulances and the rapid response vehicles as well.
And Sam, have most of the people who were in the arena, I mean, we were told some 20,000 people were there, are they gone from the area now?
Yeah, the area is still, it's very quiet. It's very quiet for the city centre. Initially, after the first wave of sirens and the initial evacuation, it was filled with cars. The roads were absolutely bedlam, people just going through red lights. It was very much families. There was kids, mums and dads. They were all doing everything they could to get out of the city centre, and it looks like the emergency services did a really good job of managing that traffic, because it was only sort of bedlam for about 5 minutes, and now the roads are extremely still. I'm not too sure if you can hear it, but we've got 2 helicopters above us, both hovering extremely low. You can almost feel the FUD from the blades coming from them.
Sam, I appreciate you talking to us, and I appreciate your clear head in all this and describing what you are seeing right now. Sam Ward, thank you so much. That is some new video you're seeing that we are seeing also for the first time. Obviously, people arriving at hospitals. 19 people dead, according to authorities at this point. Although, frankly, with this statement or press conference, we are expecting and awaiting at some point. We may get an update on that number. 19 killed. That so far confirmed by police, around 50 or so injured. And again, the full extent of their injuries we are likely to hear more about when police actually do give that press conference. But here you see some people arriving in the hospital. I do just want to give you by the way, Sam, when we were talking to Sam Ward, that was probably about 30 or 40 minutes ago. About 2 minutes later, after we stopped talking to him, we got word that police had found a package that they thought was suspicious, and they were going to have a controlled detonation. So what we think when Sam was saying he sees things, looks like something else is kicking off more, people were running into the local fire station, we believe what he was actually witnessing was the run-up to that controlled detonation. So it's not that there was a second attack in any way, but that's what we believe he was witnessing, though at the time we weren't sure, and nor was he sure why there was suddenly an increase of activity, but we believe that's what it was. But I do just want to give you kind of a rundown of what we know, what we don't know, and a general kind of flow of events. We understand that this device, believed to be a suicide attack, a suicide device. You just heard the reporting that law enforcement believes they have identified the suicide attacker. We believe the device was exploded around 10:35 p.m. That, according to Manchester Police, as of 2 hours ago. They may update with a more exact time. It's not clear exactly where the device was detonated. We expect to hear more on that shortly. But from a number of eyewitnesses, people have talked about an area around a box office area that is basically there's a train station, above-ground train station, Victoria Station, that's attached to this arena. And then it's about a 2-minute walk, I understand, from the train to the box office area. And then one would go through security. They had bag checks at this concert. We believe the explosion took place somewhere in what's been described as a foyer around the box office area, though, again, that's just based on a number of eyewitnesses. And as you all know, those can be unreliable. A number of people talked about coming through that area when they entered the venue, but when they left, they did not go through that area because that is where they believe that the device exploded. At 10:35 or so, the concert had just ended, according to a number of eyewitnesses. The lights had gone up. People had started to leave when the explosion itself took place. People inside the arena, and you see the arena there, heard the explosion. We're not clear of what it was. You can see a lot of pink things. Those are actually balloons that were part of the concert. Kind of, as you know, in concerts, they're thrown out into the crowds. Some people believe perhaps it was just a bunch of balloons popping. Others who were nearby said they could actually feel the detonation in their chest. They could feel it in the ground and obviously heard the sound. Some people who had been leaving the venue came back in, and then, according to a number of eyewitnesses who we have talked to over the last 2 hours, people just began to leave in the other direction. There was obviously a lot of concern as 20,000 people are trying to get out as quickly as possible from an arena. We talked to one man, Andy James, who was there with his 9-year-old brother. It was his little brother's first concert. Andy talked about walking out with his brother. His hand was on his brother's heart, and he could feel his little brother's heart kind of beating out of his chest. They, of course, thankfully got out safely.
Were you at the concert? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Would I be able to talk to you just a second?
I'm not going on the news or something, am I?
Okay.
Right, thank you.
So a lot of people have been coming through the cordon and making their way back to hotels, to taxis. They didn't want to talk. It's entirely understandable. Now, as people were leaving, we had several reports that it could have been an electrical fault, it could have been a gas main. And then an hour later, we had confirmation of the sheer scale of this incident. 19 fatalities, around 50 injured, and it began to take on something far more sinister. And we will be hearing from the Greater Manchester Chief Constable, who is going to be giving a statement on the steps of GMP headquarters soon. He will be across everything, of course, and he'll be giving us an update. But all of the streets around here are cordoned off. Very quiet now. People have been going back to their hotels or trying to reconnect with loved ones. This concert was attended by around 20,000 people. The capacity of the arena is 21,000. It's the biggest arena in Europe. This was a sellout concert. Young, old, families, everybody was in there. And many people were trying to reconnect with relatives, parents who were picking some of the younger ones, the teenagers up. And earlier on, it was people just trying to get beyond the cordon to their hotels, to their taxis, to see their relatives. And now things have started to quieten down. Beyond this police tape, there will now be a huge operation to try and pick through the chronology of what happened from the moment that concert started, who was allowed in, the level of security checks. We heard that the explosion actually occurred in one of the public areas of the arena. And if anyone knows the arena, there's the inside where the seating is, and then you leave, rather like a football stadium, into a series of networks of tunnels which go up and down steps and then out into the fresh air. Now, something happened within that middle ring, which is actually public land, and that is where we're told the explosions happened, or explosion, we're not quite sure yet. And so there's still some information to pick through about exactly the chronology of how many people were out at the time where the explosion happened. Now, around an hour ago, there was a controlled explosion not far from here, just around the corner at Manchester Cathedral. Very loud bang. We were warned about it. That turned out to be some abandoned clothing in a bag. Of course, heightened state of anxiety, heightened state of security. The bomb squad were called in, sniffer dogs were called in, and that package was dealt with, and it was deemed to be nothing. The fear, of course, that it was some kind of secondary device. It wasn't. When I was driving into Manchester, there was an abandoned car on the crosshatches. We've got some pictures, perhaps, that we can show you. A car that had been abandoned on the crosshatches of a crossroads. Again, it looked very suspicious. They called the police dogs in. They went inside. There was a huge amount of security around the car. Everyone was being moved back. That car was cleared. So there have been some incidents connected to this which could have been much more serious than they turned out to be. I'm just going to step out again and just try and get Andy just to go in as tight as he can, just to show you the police van. The ambulances have moved now. What we've seen in the last hour or two is lots of ambulances, sometimes 5 or 6 at a time, going into the cordoned area and then leaving again to one of the many hospitals around the city of Manchester.
Nick Martin, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. And just to reiterate what Nick was saying there, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Ian Hopkins, expected to give a statement on the steps of the police headquarters now. So he's clearly late. We will take you there, of course, as soon as it happened. But just to reiterate that Ariana Grande was and is a massive star in America, and not surprisingly, therefore, performers from across the globe have been paying tribute to those who died in this suspected terror attack at the Ariana Grande concert. Harry Styles, One Direction, of course, said, "I'm heartbroken over what happened in Manchester tonight, sending love to everyone involved." Katy Perry tweeted, "Praying for everyone" at the Ariana Grande show. And comedians as well, Matt Lucas, for example, saying his thoughts are with everyone affected by the terrible attack. Cher has written, "My prayers go out to the people of Manchester." Had special times there from youth and beyond. And Katie Stunsell said she'd just finished performing in London when she heard the gut-wrenching news, as she put it, and adding, "So very sorry for the families who have lost loved ones." But certainly it has dominated film premieres, the Baywatch film, for example, because of the pull of Ariana Grande as a star in the States, and finally the band Nickelback as well. Manchester, you are in our hearts, thoughts and prayers, sending all love and light to those affected. Stay strong.
operations squad for 2 years in the FBI. Full court press on one individual will take about 30 people.
Wow, really?
30 agents to do 24/7, 7 days a week, use aircraft, do the full coverage, which we did on organized crime figures, terrorism cases in those days. It's very, very difficult. No agency has those kind of resources.
And in order to devote those kind of resources, you have to be, I mean, you have to have a lot on that person to really believe that they may go out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you do.
You'll notice that the FBI doesn't talk about how many people they have under that kind of surveillance in the United States. That's because the number is so low.
Exactly.
It's not only 30 people on the ground. Remember, if they're communicating in a foreign language, you need translators, you need analysts to do the data analysis. Go back even further. You need lawyers to go to a judge to say, I want coverage on this person. You start multiplying that out against, let's say, only 10 subjects. You're already into hundreds of people. And the Bureau's got 35,000 covering everything from white-collar crime to gangs to terrorism. There are very few people you can put on that kind of coverage. And remember, too, they're looking for that coverage, and they'll make it. You can't do that.
You know, I mean, I've followed on cases in the United States where FBI would run an informant on somebody for years in order to try to gather information about that person. And the FBI would come under criticism for the amount of money they paid that informant. In one case, it was like $130,000 over 6 years. Based on what you're saying, that's actually not expensive, given if the alternative is running 30 agents on somebody for that length of time. I mean, that's millions.
And then you hear the criticism of the FBI that, well, this person was on the FBI's radar 6 years ago, and why isn't he still? Why aren't they still watching this guy? Well, that's a good example. You know, you just can't. You can only narrow it down to the top ones you think and hope you're right.
Paul Cruikshank, at this point, you know, given what we know based on CNN's reporting, based on what we heard from Pamela Brown and Shimon Peroki-Pez and Aaron Perez, where do you see the focus of this investigation? I mean, if they have learned if they've identified the attacker, I don't know if that means they have actually identified the person by name or just found enough to begin to get close to identifying this person by name. Where does it go from here?
Well, Anderson, as we've been discussing, they'll be reviewing all the CCTV, trying to figure out this individual's route, where they came from. They'll be doing all the forensics, the DNA analysis, the fingerprint analysis to see if they've got some kind of match, if this individual is on some kind of database, somebody who may have had a criminal record, as we've been discussing. So many of those that have got involved in ISIS terrorism in recent years have had criminal records. So trying to figure out who this individual is and who they're connected to. At this hour, there has not been any claim of responsibility, it has to be said, from any terrorist group, Al-Qaeda or ISIS, or any other group. It should be noted that in just the past few days, Al-Qaeda, through Hamza bin Laden, the son of Osama bin Laden, have called for attacks in the West. Hamza bin Laden is somebody who's been promoted through the ranks, who may even take over the entire Al-Qaeda organization one day. So they're not just looking at groups like ISIS, they're also looking at Al-Qaeda here, but quite possible that this could also just be one individual who managed to put this device together. Obviously, the more sophisticated the device is, the more powerful the device is, then the more likely it is that the individual in question would have had some kind of terrorist training overseas, instruction in how to do this. It's quite tricky to make bombs from the kind of chemicals that you can go and buy commercially on the streets of the United States and the United Kingdom. So it definitely helps if you've had some kind of practice, some kind of training. But I've got to say as well that ISIS are putting out more and more instructions out over the internet about how to make bombs. We've seen that from Al-Qaeda in Yemen too, who provided the detailed bomb-making instructions for the devices that were involved in the Boston bombings, but also the San Bernardino devices that attacker, those attackers in that attack left behind to try to target emergency services. But this is an investigation which will be pursued at a furious rate now in the hours ahead. I think we can expect that the Prime Minister to convene the COBRA emergency cabinet, which comes together at times like this when there has been a major terrorist attack on UK soil. And that's what we're talking about here, a mass casualty terrorist attack, the first of that type since the London bombings all the way back in 2005.
Yeah, and Paul, again, I know I've been saying this for about an hour, but we continue to get a heads up that we expect a press conference any moment now. We obviously are going to bring that to you. We've talked about this a little bit, but I mean, the clock is ticking on this. Obviously, there are long-term issues to learn about this, but most immediately, they need to find out, are there other people involved in this? Are there other people out there? Is there a cell right now in Manchester, England?
That's right, and the concern is that there could be follow-on attacks if there is a wider cell behind this. If there are a group of ISIS operatives, say, who've come back from Syria that have been dispatched to the United Kingdom to carry out a terrorist attack. We saw with the Paris-Brussels cell, they managed to launch this same cell in 2 cities. There are some signs they were also trying to plot an attack at Amsterdam airport as well. And so if you have a group of, say, 5 or 6 or even a dozen individuals, which was the number involved in the Paris and Brussels cell, they have the capacity to attack again. And so they're very worried as we move through towards the morning that there could be more people out there. And another thing that ISIS have been trying to pull off, and there's some intelligence on this, is to launch attacks sort of near simultaneously in various parts of a country, various parts of the European continent, all at the same time.
Yeah.
They want to get attacks through which are very spectacular, which are going to get a lot of media attention, to change the subject line to the fact they're losing a lot of territory in Syria and Iraq.
Yeah. Michael Weiss is joining us. He's a senior editor of the Daily Beast, author of the great book, ISIS Inside the Army of Terror. Michael, you've been following this. You just tweeted out, whoever's responsible, the primary target was women and children. Keep that fact closely tethered throughout the night. I mean, these are young kids, many young kids at this Ariana Grande concert. It's a sickening thought that somebody is laying in wait for them to leave this arena in order to detonate this device. You've also pointed out, I've been reading your tweets online tonight, I mean, Manchester, there is a history here of radical Islamist extremism for quite a while. There was actually one of the largest al-Qaeda plots was hatched out of Manchester, wasn't it?
That's right. My colleague Robin Simcox at the Heritage Foundation pointed out that this was one of the largest attacks that fortunately was aborted or interrupted by the British security services. Abid Nazir, a Pakistani national who was actually extradited to the United States by the UK, and on in his trial in Brooklyn, when he was cross-examining the British cop who had essentially raided his home and found all these devices and information and material suggesting he was planning this attack on one of the most crowded marketplaces in Manchester, said, "Oh, it's great to hear a Mancunian accent." So just another grim reminder that a lot of these attacks on the continent, in the UK, come from native sons who were born there and who are afforded every opportunity. Their parents might have immigrated, but they grew up essentially as Brits, as Frenchmen, as Germans. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out if this was either a native Manc or somebody who had spent his entire life in the UK. And to your point, yes, this is a concert, these are, the cliche is they're soft targets. I don't know there's anything particularly soft about the carnage that's being perpetrated, but here you have a band that caters to a certain demographic, young teenage girls. So this will have been chosen. If this was, and again, I want to sort of issue the caveats that we don't know exactly what's happened yet. I don't want to get ahead of my skis on this. But if this was an act of Islamist or al-Qaeda or ISIS perpetrated or executed terrorism, they will have planned to kill as many women and children as possible. And what they'll do to justify it is they'll say, you, the Crusader conspiracy that's ranged against the Sunni Ummah, you're killing our daughters and our women and our children in Syria and Iraq. That's their moral equivalence. That's the argument they trotted out when they immolated the Jordanian pilot in a cage several years ago. That's the argument they always trot out.
Constable of Greater Manchester Police to give us a full update. They've been very good all evening, since this incident happened at 10:30, but they have to tread that really fine line between informing the public and not to spread panic even further.
Yes, and give misinformation at the start, which we've certainly experienced in previous terror attacks here in this country. More details from the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, condemning the barbaric attack which saw a blast rip through a music venue in Manchester. She said the full details of what happened at the Manchester Arena were still emerging as police confirmed 19 people had died. Ms Rudd said, "My thoughts are with all those affected by this barbaric act. The full details of what happened are still emerging, but I'm so proud of the police and first responders who reacted to this tragic incident so swiftly."
And Nicola Sturgeon has tweeted just now, "Heartbreaking news from Manchester. My thoughts are with all those who have lost loved ones or been injured in this barbaric attack."
And the Cobra meeting we're just hearing from Downing Street expected to take place at around 9 a.m. So whether some cabinet members will be travelling overnight, whether they're back in London anyway, who knows? But certainly Downing Street expecting to host a Cobra meeting at around 9 a.m. Press Association reporting that Theresa May will suspend her campaign. One wonders, Ashish, if it is just for tomorrow. She's had a wobble, we know, because of the plans on social care, the manifesto change, and, you know, in some respects, for her to focus on this will not be a bad moment in her campaign.
I think the Tory source who spoke on the condition of anonymity a little while ago seems to suggest that campaigning will be suspended. And I imagine with an attack of this severity, it won't be just for a day or two, because this is, you know, the second most serious terrorist attack in Britain, you know, after 7/7. We're talking about 19 people who've been killed, 50 injured. One imagines that some of those injuries are quite horrific. We will be given a full update by the Greater Manchester Police, but certainly the indications from the other emergency services in Manchester, they were stretched tonight, and they had to divert all the resources they had towards this emergency at the arena. 21,000, mostly teenagers and young children, trapped inside the stadium when this explosion took place. We heard reports it was inside, then we heard reports from the arena itself that it was just outside, but certainly targeting very many young people who were there without guardians or parents or family members.
Tim Farron, the Liberal Democrat leader, has himself cancelled a planned campaign visit to Gibraltar, said this is a shocking and horrific attack targeting children and young people who were simply enjoying a concert. Let's just see if there's any more detail. Yes, Downing Street is to hold that emergency security meeting at 9 in the morning, according to the Press Association. And Nicola Sturgeon, again, as you said, heartbreaking news from Manchester. So Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said his thoughts were with those caught up in the terrible incident. Andy Burnham, the Metro Mayor for Greater Manchester, said this has been a terrible night for our great city. My heart goes out to families who have lost loved ones. My admiration to our brave emergency services. A terrible night for our great city. And Liverpool's Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, whose daughters were at the Manchester Arena concert, said, "I feel sick to think that people have lost their lives at a gig attended by so many young people. All my thoughts go out to those parents waiting to hear of the safety of their children. It's a parent's worst nightmare, so sad." And he then paid tribute to a taxi driver who had picked up his own two daughters and taken them to safety. And we want Manchester City FC tweeting, "It's with great sadness we hear of the terrible events at the arena. Our hearts go out to all affected and to our city's emergency services." And certainly we know that all hospitals, local hospitals, had been put on alert. A bomb disposal unit went to the scene, but a suspected device turned out to be abandoned clothing. And certainly Andy Burnham was talking about an ongoing incident. Whether that is still the case, perhaps we will find out from the Chief Constable. And a great traction, Ashish, also amongst US stars who are followers of the work of this young pop star.
Yeah, I mean, the interest in what's happened in Manchester in the United States is huge because it's Ariana Grande. People like Dwayne Johnson, you know, The Rock tweeting our prayers and strength to the victims and their families involved in this tragedy in Manchester. Harry Styles, I'm heartbroken over what happened in Manchester tonight. Neil Horan, his One Direction star. Absolutely horrendous what happened in Manchester tonight. My thoughts are with the great people of Manchester. Nicki Minaj, my heart hurts for my sister Ariana and every family affected by this tragic event in the UK. And it goes on and on. And what they do is they speak to the sort of people who were at that concert tonight. That's why these tweets are important, because these are the people who connect with the young people who would have been at this concert tonight. So certainly the music industry, the showbiz industry, trying to make sense of what's happened tonight in Manchester.
The concert, Ariana Grande's concert, finished at 10:30 p.m. The show's scheduled finish. Thousands of fans begin to file out of the arena's 4 exits, and then a huge bomb-like bang is heard in the arena. Witnesses describe being knocked from their feet by an explosion and seeing dozens of injured, possibly dead people, including children, lying on the floor. Others describe panic as concert-goers run for exits. 10:35 p.m, Greater Manchester Police are called to reports of an explosion at Manchester Arena. Dozens of emergency services vehicles stream into the area. And by 10:55 p.m, police urge people to stay away from the area as responders deal with what they call a serious incident. And by 1:45 police confirmed that there have been a number of fatalities. Finally, after 1 o'clock in the morning, we learned that 19 people had been confirmed dead and around 50 others injured following the suspected explosion police say is now being treated as a terrorist incident. The Press Association says that a COBRA meeting is expected to take place at Downing Street at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, joining the words of the Prime Minister, Theresa May, saying that her thoughts are with all those affected by this barbaric act in Manchester. Still awaiting a news conference from the Chief Constable. Back with that after this.
When you've got one person, the likelihood that that individual is going to make a mistake, they're not talking to anybody else, obviously, lowers, and the likelihood you can catch them also lowers.
But if it's one person, if it's more than one person, it's probably more than 2 people, because to go out and recruit someone, to recruit somebody, if it's not the same person, I would assume it would require more than one person to go out and find somebody. You've got to kind of ask around, I would think.
That's right, and that's one reason that you get more potential threat from larger conspiracies, but more opportunity from people like me. They go out searching for a greater capability, who can train us, who can provide the explosives. They talk to a radicalizer, so there's opportunity and cost with bigger conspiracies.
Yeah, there's still obviously a lot to be learned. We know this device was detonated around 10:35 p.m. local time. It is now, let's see, it's 10 o'clock here, so it's 2 a.m. 3 a.m. right now, almost 3 a.m. In Manchester. We anticipate a press conference from police at some point. We've been waiting for it some point, but we are told it is going to take place. Our CNN coverage continues throughout the night. Obviously, I want to turn things over right now to Don Lemon.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Anderson, thank you so much. Much more on our breaking news now. 9 people confirmed dead, around 50, if not more, injured at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. We're awaiting a news conference. It's going to happen at any moment. But I need to tell you that a Western law enforcement official is now telling CNN a male at the scene in Manchester has been identified as the probable suicide bomber in this event. A U.S. official said suicide bombing is now considered to be the likely reason for this blast.
Currently, we have 19 people confirmed to have lost their lives in the explosion and around 50 casualties that are being treated at 6 hospitals across Greater Manchester. My thoughts are very much with those that have been injured and lost their lives and their loved ones at this terrible time. We are doing all that we can to support them. Officers from Greater Manchester Police and Emergency Services are working at the scene and are supporting those affected. We are coordinating the operation here at Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. An emergency number is available for all those concerned about their loved ones or anyone who may have been in the area. The number is 0161 856 9400. We are currently treating this as a terrorist incident until we have further information. We are working closely with National Counter-Terrorism Policing Network and UK intelligence partners. This is clearly a very concerning time for everyone. We're doing all that we can, working with local and national agencies to support those affected as we gather information about what happened last night. As you will understand, we are still receiving information and updates, so we'll provide further detail when we have a clearer picture. I want to thank people for their support and would ask them to remain vigilant, and if they have any concerns at all, to report them to the National Anti-Terrorist Hotline. The number is 0800 789 321. It is important also that people here in Manchester avoid the area around Manchester Arena so that emergency services can continue to effectively deal with the incident at that location. Thank you very much.
Have there been any arrests, Chief Constable? So no questions then taken from the Chief Constable. Confirmation of their earlier written statement that 19 people were killed and 50 others have been injured. They say they are currently treating it as a terrorist incident and working closely with UK intelligence partners and counter-terror police in this country. And in fact, the US Department of Homeland Security has just said it is closely monitoring the situation in Manchester after the explosion. That is a statement issued by them. They go on to say the Department of Homeland Security says it has no information to indicate a specific credible threat involving music venues in the United States. So that is the statement being issued by what you might deem to be one of the UK intelligence partners who we are working closely with here in the UK. Still receiving information and updates, the Chief Constable said, important for people to avoid the area so that first responders can work efficiently, and they will bring us more details as they get it. In the meantime, let's bring in one person who was at the arena, Cheryl MacDonald, who joins us on the line. What a terrible evening for everybody there. What are your thoughts now?
Hi, well, I took my little girl, who's 9, for a treat. I'm just so sad about the whole thing. We're just so shocked. I don't know what to do or what to think. We're just, obviously, we're coming from South Shields at tea time. And you never expect something like this to happen. Just so shocking and awful for everybody involved.